Hey, we started the march on the 26th of August. Going to my second home, the mountain. Always for the firefighters, bakers, butchers, plumbers, electricians, the welders. On these military grade boots. It was a bit moody, but I feel better now. Done what I had to do, and of course gotta get it. To see for those who are involved in the production, distribution of food, and of course all those who are now on the roads. Think about how many truckers now on the road, and truckers, the bakers, the butchers, the nurses, the doctors, the firefighters, plumbers, electricians, the welders. It's always meditation, always geopolitics with yours truly. And actually I'm gonna discuss more the DMAA. Let's see. Oh wow, I wish I could fill this fridge up one time. Oh yeah, somebody can take that. I'm gonna leave that. That's cucumber. And that is something what we have, of course, to get doing with that. And that is something what you gotta check. I guess maybe when we come back we're gonna have a little bit of that food, but I wish one day I could just fill this whole fridge up, you know, just fill it with food. And you know, oh please, no food waste. This is actually a great one which can be put there for somebody to take. Just need to wash it and cut it, so I guess we'll retrieve it and put it back there, because otherwise it might get squashed. Turn your heads left and right when you cross the street. Truly, this is a one-way, and welcome to another special marching to the mountain, my second home. Asp, artist, athlete, philosopher, geopolitical theoretical, honest, and theorist, and androgynous pansexual mystic. 24/7 for the firefighters, the plumbers, the butchers, the construction workers on steel toes, those in the daycares, changing some of those diapers. Gotta salute the daycare workers changing some diapers, and teachers, schools back to start this week and next week. I guess by next week is gonna be both the high school and the regular elementary school, all schools level starting, I guess, by next week. And I guess you already had enough, so we're gonna concentrate on the beauty of nature. And yeah, that's a weird aspy thing right there. I was trying to calculate in my by estimation mathematics what is the proportion of the ratio, how big, how much by, and there were 3 bubbles, and how much was the ratio between the small, the medium, and the big one. And this is just probably aspy characteristics, weird, odd, bizarre, strange characteristics which we aspies have, and which we have to always be somewhat attentive and work on them, and be mindful, of course. And consequently that I am part of the North American Collectif as a Canadian Quebecer North American who loves those yellow flowers such as these. Such a beauties, what a beauties. Gotta get it for those beauties. Look at these beautiful flowers. And yeah, yellow I always love. Always gives me a little bit of embellishment to that, and to give a little bit of that rock and roll for those who plant the public flowers, because I appreciate public gardens, and it always the beautification of the public sphere is something which of course is in the beautification of the public sphere, and that beautification is part of the brains and muscle which we endeavor in the public service and the public works, which we need to do a mass public work projects across the North American Collectif as a mass public private partnership, always for the 10, the 50, and the 3, always for the 63, because this Quebecer Canadian was born in the USA 3 times in previous past lives. Once was born as a woman, twice as a man, served in the same United States Armed Forces, twice, same different wars, same army, different wars, and I don't know what this truck is, the worker who is driving this truck, but I kind of know with an indication that it's Costco wholesale, how the price is going, because prices are increasing, and the truck is on the road now transporting so many goods. Always meditating, being mindful for them as I cross here the street safely, because sometimes the brakes malfunction, even if it's in one way, or the citizen driver might be stressed, or by mistake, error, negligence, press the accelerator instead of the brake. So always when you're in the public, you got added responsibilities, duties, and obligations which are not concordant in the private sphere of your own domain. So you have always added responsibilities, duties, and obligations which of course are not consequently imposed on one's well-being, such as maybe that 9-volt battery there, if it's theirs, I guess. Maybe it's theirs. Excuse me, there's a battery there. There's a battery, maybe you lost it? Vous avez perdu une batterie? Oh, it's not yours? Okay. No. So I just want to make sure the battery there, because they might have lost it with their work. And you know, if it's a child and swallows that thing, and always got to be mindful and just for public safety. You know, a child can swallow that, and God, goddess forbid, I guess, because I play both God and goddess. But just like the other day, you know, I removed that pointy object, and 4 weeks ago I mentioned that there was a knife on the street to, I don't know, I'm gonna say my family, my elongated family here in the North American Collective with a daughter. 4 weeks ago, I even have it on camera. I mentioned that there was a knife. I was walking, and there was a knife, and she was with the child, and the child was biking. And so I said, if the child comes and bikes, and the bike falls or picks it up, and that's a potential injurious event. You know, we have to have some public safety in order. You know, always the liberty and the individual public safety in order have to be counterbalanced with some rights and responsibilities, and duties and rights and responsibilities. Double RR, this is my North American Collective Civilizational Complex for the 21st century, is we're gonna ensure that freedom. And of course, my brothers and sisters who lose their liberty or who gotta do their corrections. And of course, those who have lost their wealth and are tough times economically, financially, commercially. Myself, that's my only stress right now. Speaking of the 63, we got plenty of my brothers and sisters across the 63 who need a second chance, some assistance, and always gonna put it up for the ambulance drivers. I don't know how their situation. See, one is going north, the other is going south, because I'm going east, right? So gotta salute both ways, east, west, north, south, as we counterbalance our rights, responsibilities, duties, and obligations, as we have traffic responsibilities. So, example, in the car, not to be overly, you know, intoxicated and inebriated, and to drink too much, and to have a quantity of alcohol which impedes and can potentially harm another fellow individual, sovereign human citizen being, which it's always something which one has to be, I guess, aware of and be mindful of, and in the public. Now we are outside in the public, and we have these added responsibilities, duties, and obligations, and I'm mindful of them. It's just not me, myself, with my neurological, mental divergent condition. It's, again, please. Asperger's is not a disease. 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 I've heard it when I was working, you know, in French here. We got that French in La Belle Province, which I rock and roll with 24/7. I heard it's une maladie, it's a disease, and I heard the whispers. No, it's not a disease, you know. It's not that. It's just our brains have these mutations at the micro level, and so when it comes to certain aspects, we are, I would use the term, less able, less capable of full understanding, or the communications, how we communicate and how we process information, is especially when it comes to the social non-written rules and regulations in the social sphere. We process them differently than the majority, the 99.56%, because Aspies, I'm part of this tiny small minority of the population, which are less than 1%, less than half of a percent, even less than. It's about 0.44%. Look at that beautiful sky. It's gotta take a few seconds sometimes to just look up. So I'm gonna get a bit into Asperger's, but today I will discuss especially direct military assistance and action. My theory of course, I'm an independent geopolitical theoretical analyst, theorist, strategist, thinker. My strategies are mostly for the North American Collective, especially the NORAD complex, the North American Collective, the Canada, United States, and North America includes Mexico as well, and NATO-centric. So NATO comprises 32 countries now. It evolved since 1949, but it's pretty much in foundation in 1949. So it's been celebrating 75 years. 75 years, right? Last year it celebrated 75 years of the NATO military alliance, collective security, what's called in IR, international relations, collective security, as of course the legislator has advanced and our laws have advanced since after the Second World War. But the military alliance known as NATO is of course an important part of any geopolitical theoretical analyst's analysis, if not one of the main in the top when it comes to geopolitics. Of course, military alliances and conflicts and war and domestic internal are of course the main analysis to be done. So concluding to say, I'm going to discuss DMAA, and I want to thank my anonymous friend who wasn't my friend because of the money. And today I had an interesting engagement conversation, and her feedback was very important for me as a neurodivergent, as a person living with Asperger's. How the interaction, I've learned some points of how it can be perceived, that communications by neurotypicals, but of course, I'm just gonna get out of the way for the children there. They're coming, and I'm just gonna wait for them to pass. I'm gonna actually circumvent because this is one way, so that they can go freely on the bike and on the trottinette. And have decided that because of my backpack, it's more secure for me to get out of the way for the youth, and the young. Evaluate the age exactly, because can't really exactitude and certitude claim XYZ age for the youth, but just wanted to get out of the way so that they pass freely. Because with the backpack, see, I got the backpack, got the red gloves, got those red gloves, and see, I got that. It's big, so with my movements, I evaluated that as best if I get out of the way for them to proceed more safely due to my backpack taking space. And Aspie, sometimes not when I march or when I dance or when I box or when I work out, when I do push-ups, but there's a certain clumsiness, that Aspies, we are sometimes clumsiness. It's can be more or less in other Aspies than others, but nonetheless, back to the geopolitics. I gotta thank my anonymous friend for gifting me 2 books on autism with chapters relating specifically to Asperger's, which has been fused and merged into the autism spectrum, and of course which has now, since also a book which was loaned 4 times because it was a library loan, which I recommend to all, especially for Aspies, to understand our vulnerabilities and how to build bridges fundamentally with the neurotypical world. Appreciating Asperger's syndrome, appreciating Asperger's syndrome. Appreciating Asperger's syndrome is, of course, appreciating Asperger's syndrome is a characteristic. It's a great book to further understand the characteristics, the traits, and differences in social communications and the way we are between us and the neurotypical world. And so that must be concluded and interjected in this great formative appellation, where these more unwritten social rules and the ways that we communicate can be perceived strange, odd, bizarre, and not fully understood, and even misunderstood to the point of creating contention, hostility, and outright losing jobs, as probably was my case, because Aspies, we have trouble keeping jobs, maintaining jobs, and the unemployment rate is more than 80%. More than 80%. More than 80%. That's totally unacceptable, of course. For Aspies, it's more than 80%, the unemployment rate. I wonder where this machine was fabricated, made in. It's always something which gotta salute. I turn my head a lot, like almost, not really 360, because that would be kind of owl-like, but 180 degrees. So Aspies were different, and we have these differences in how we process information, especially social information, social non-written rules, such as, for example, personal space, right? So an Aspie might, not that an Aspie wants to get into your phrase, but it would seem like that, but it's just Aspies will break, with a few yards, a few meters, 1 meter, 1.5 meters, or a few yards, 4 yards, almost 5 yards, the personal space. One Aspie then would be, well, we will get very close, but very close to like inches, very close, even close, to the point of close, almost contact, right, body to body, but maybe just an inch or 2 or 3.5 inches or 4 inches, which for many is due to the personal space composition of the individual sovereign. That might not be good. It might cause certain discomfort, certain pleasance, certain discomfort, alarm even, and feeling of insecurity or concern might be caused in the individual with which the aspie is discussing, and the fact that breaching that personal space is something which aspies, I always have to back one step, two steps away, because I learned it, and it's something which, you know, it's a characteristic, it's a trait, not a symptom, because when you use the word symptoms, it's for a disease, while Asperger's, you cannot medicate it. But the point, of course, B is, of course, my DMAA, direct military actions. I'm gonna go check out those yellows. So the DMAA, I discussed the DMAA, direct military assistance or action. So the DMAA is a philosophical theory, of course, relating to the world of geopolitics. In the world of geopolitics, of course, it's my domain, my realm, of course, geopolitics. I'm an independent geopolitical theoretical analyst and theorist, philosopher, and of course, strategist who develop strategies such as the bipolar strategy for the North American collective fusion via the DRT, and thus the total BDD, benevolent dominance and dominion of the world in terms of geopolitical dominion and dominance, BDD, benevolent dominance and dominion, via the fusion kind of United States into the 63 Imperial Republican complex via the creation of the two complementary covenant and cooperative institutions, basically fundamentally public-private partnership-based institutions. I'm going to probably discuss that, but for now, DMA, I had a discussion, and my anonymous friend, thank you again for those 3 books, and one of them was loaned, and the other one, of course, was loaned, and the other one was rented. So, of course, the situation is that the conversation we have and the situational awareness of the conversation, it revolves around me discussing the DMAA. So keep in mind that this is my special interest, also known as obsessive interest. And of course, that special interest, also known as obsessive interest, for me is geopolitics. And of course, that is something which, of course, you have to fully understand. And that's why aspies can excel, and I have to take a lot of pride in my geopolitical work. And of course, my geopolitical work, I gotta give a salutation here as I'm gonna turn on the side here. And of course, my geopolitical work, I take a lot of pride because I predicted what's happening now back in 2019. 2019, I predicted that there's going to be an international conflagration. I even have proof. So my work as an independent geopolitical theoretical analyst and theorist dates for many years. And of course, that is the premise. Of course, one of my philosophical theories, which I believe to be truth, or that it could cause certain consequences, which of course have, of course, the appellation to be certain consequential, or the matters, of course, where they are prepositioned to fully understand, of course, the composition of those situational awareness, where the DMAA, so the DMAA stands for direct. I'm gonna wait, of course, a few seconds until I cross over, and then I'm gonna cross over to the other side, and then I'm gonna cross over to the other side, you know. Now it's a one-way street, so in theory I have to only turn my head that way. So I discussed, and I had to ask because, you know, ask me sometimes we don't know if the person is interested. So I said, do you want to pursue the conversation? Because I understand maybe it's not something that interests you as much as me, to the point of what neurotypicals would call obsession, but I don't use the word obsessive because when I discuss geopolitics, that's my kingdom, that's my realm, that's my special interest, also known as obsessive interest, along with rock and roll and dancing. Dancing being my favorite sport, or do I love gridiron and other sports? Look at those beautiful yellows. So of course, that is of course the situation where we are, of course, nascent, to be of somebody who's just at an introductory nascent level of geopolitics, right? And of course, somebody who's just an amateur, or somebody who's has years and years and years of study experience in the world with geopolitics, which encompasses a whole array of philosophies, history, statistics, encompasses basically the whole world and everything in it, in many ways. Language, military relations, economy, finance, development, technology, all these things are interrelated in the world of geopolitics, right? Even public works, for example. You can do a mass treatise on the necessity of mass public work, of course, to be done in the world of geopolitics, and of course, all the studies and pertinent to where we are now. See, for example, the geopolitical work to change the sewers, the aqueducts, is a major, of course, undertaking, of course, for the philosophies where we are. So thanks to the public workers, we have the aqueducts and all the work in the past for me to hydrate and drink clean potable water on my way to the mountain, right? That is something which is also part of geopolitics, mass public works, right? As I have been calling for the mass financing for mass public work projects. So therefore, in this aspect, in this fundamental aspect, of course, where we are from theory to practice, I was discussing earlier this morning with my anonymous friend the DMAA theory, and understood a point of view. I want to say that my DMA theory and philosophy does not include anything to do with humanitarian aid, because that was a bit of the misunderstanding, and I don't want to sound like I don't have compassion or empathy. It's not that. If I can show some compassion and empathy by action for somebody, by doing something, as Aspies were a lot of Aspies are misunderstood as not being compassionate or being empathetic. However, it's not to be understood that our empathy and our compassion is more action-based. By if you're able to do something for somebody, or in our direct sphere of influence, to do something, to render some justice or some acts of goodness and kindness. Like I would need a massage therapy. I've been complaining for years now that I need a massage therapy session, and of course, being that I've wanted to have a massage therapy for years and years and years and years, and I still can't afford it, as I can't afford to go to a dermatologist, as I can't afford to do a lot of things, which the impediment of freedom and limiting some freedom and joy, even to the point of limiting some security, freedom and joy, is impeded by, of course, economic, financial, monetary means. The money is to buy, sell, and I know my DRT theory is, of course, gonna, I guess, maybe save us even from Armageddon in many ways, because I believe to be a mass public-private partnership which needs to be initiated in regards to the DRT theory, in regards to the DRT theory. That's red, my favorite color. And even these, see how many of these are across Montreal, Hawk Island, across Quebec. I live in the Metropolis Island. Montreal Metropolis has 2.5 million people. We're surrounded by a big river. But how many of these are across the 63? There must be millions. And what is the standard? Is this, how much of this is fabricated, made, to get out of the way for the youth, how much of this is made in the USA or in Canada, and how is fabricated? Or if you want to see an Aspie trait, we kind of want to see a little bit of the measurements and calculate a bit of the weight. Basically, of course, things to do with mathematics, mathematical questions, of course, in regards to this. However, we can be calculating a lot of mathematics because it has a lot of different shapes, right? It has a triangle, circle, then it has a pentagon, right, etc., etc., etc. So those are things which are, of course, protrude into perhaps a weirdness aspect of having this neurological mental divergent condition of Asperger's. However, it has its strengths. So the strengths usually are revolved around those special interests. So when I discussed, of course, the DMAA, the direct military assistance or action, either action or assistance. So that AA can be interchanged about action or assistance. So whether it's action or assistance, I'm gonna go on the other side. I think it's safer for me to go if I go on the other side. So, of course, the direct military assistance or action is of course, to be relational to, of course, the fundamental aspects of geopolitics. The fundamental aspects of geopolitics is that this direct military assistance and action is one of my uniqueness, among my other unique, of course, philosophies and theories. So again, you have to divorce the DMA action, of course, from history. Not necessarily history, but history in the sense far away history, because it's related to NATO. So from 1949, it's valid from 1949 onwards. From 1949, after the foundation of NATO. So the DMAA relates to NATO. We have that established as a consequence. It's related to NATO and NATO member countries. Direct military assistance and action. Although it's a bit complex, it's a bit scholarly, academic, rhetoric, intellectual in nature, and it has to do with geopolitical theory. And a new theory, formulation of a theory or a thesis, is of course something which we have, of course, to operate in all the dimensions where we are today, and interactive of the parts where, of course, this geopolitical theorizing and this geopolitical ethos is, of course, embodied in the DMAA, which can be, of course, consequently, of course, only related to the post-foundational elements of NATO, to the post-foundational, after the foundation of NATO in 1949, after the foundation of NATO in 1949. So that is, of course, something which, of course, has to be appellated or interjected in all the plurality of the understanding of this plural or scholarly, multi-leveled philosophy, the DMAA. This stands for Direct Military Assistance in Action. I want to give my anonymous friend a shout out and a thank you to how certain perception, she has mentioned the word arrogance, which is not arrogance. It's just a theory which has to be understood and dissected from an intellectual, scholarly, philosophical perspective, and only deconstructed or criticized if it can be criticized. Because it's, again, the criticism or the response was that it seems that it lacks humanitarian compassion. And I would say, no, that's not. It has nothing to do with humanitarian intervention or such as thing as providing food supplies, or sanitary supplies, sanitary or hygienic supplies, or bandages, or or health-wise, such as medicaments and stuff like that. This has to do with strictly military affairs. So I'm gonna discuss it. But again, want to thank my anonymous friend too for that dialogue and conversation, and to make me realize certain points which could be seen from a neurotypical perspective, and certain values which might seem a certain way, but it's not meant to be neither offensive or malicious, harmful, or negative in any way. Just like Asperger's is not evil, bad, or negative. It's not malicious. Asperger's is just a neurological mental divergent condition. It has its good, it has its bad, and according to the ABC, Asperger's is, of course, supposedly, I'm not sure, I'm not convinced, I'm going to have to watch it again, but supposedly Asperger's is a continuance. It's a continuance, of course, an evolutionary process of mankind. Now, I cannot pronounce myself in such a manner whether it is an evolutionary process or not. So whether it is an evolutionary process or not, I cannot fully constitute that it is an evolutionary process. Is it or is it not? I'm open, of course, to have some certain dialogues, and of course, got to salute the public workers. They're going to pick up the garbage. They're going to pick up the garbage with that, and I'm going to pass by that way. Thank you. Watch the cars here. Gotta stop at the cars, and you gotta stop on that side. But see, the problem is that there's no stop on the other side. See here? There's a stop there, but not a stop there. So they don't really have to stop. So there's no stop on that side. So they can go east and west without the stop there. So that is where the more danger zone comes. The corner there. There's only a stop from the north to the south, but not going east to west. So saluting the garbage collectors, sanitation workers, those who pick up the garbage. Those are athletes, please, NFL, NHL, NBA, MLB. Give them, of course, some tickets. Give them some tickets. Give them some free tickets. Season starting. So when is the HAB season started? Dancing is my favorite sport. And, of course, I want to lay the foundations for the DGA, the International, that is Imperial Integrated Dance League. Because dancing is my favorite sport. And that's, of course, something which I do on the daily. Just going to wait for my fellow citizen there. Make sure I'm prudent. And he's going to pass with the goods. And so I wanted to wait because I'm always willing to do some work. But the problem for Aspies is very high unemployment. Aspies, we have three problems. And again, it's not a disease. It's not a disorder. It's qualified as a developmental disorder. So it has a certain challenges when it comes to social interaction, communication, but we can excel at usually I have a very good memory, but except my memory days good in the facts, the geopolitical facts or events or capitals or production, statistics of production, military investments, and of course these types of good memories relates to geopolitics and even personal memory, but up of course to 2014. Up of course to 2014, and that is what it is with that, and that is what is gotta be done. So of course the category, the conjunction is of course that you gotta get it on the side of the things to get it now, the side of the things to get it for now. That my memory is, I have trouble accessing my life prior to 2014 spring, but spring 2014, February, March, April, it's already more than 11 years and 4 months ago. So I remember I used to live in a moldy place, small basement, like a tight prison cell. Was like one, even the kitchen was in the room, so I didn't really have a kitchen, and the bathroom was so small, tiny, small, tiny, super small, super tiny. It was like a prison cell, really. It was really like a prison cell. I didn't even have a bathtub. I'm grateful I have one now, because I can substitute for that massage therapy, you know. I can substitute for that massage therapy, you know. So that is what it is with that, and I can substitute for that massage therapy. And that is something which, of course, you have to appellate, and you have, of course, to consequentially do, and of course, be in the prudence on the left or right side of the situational awareness where we are, of course, to consequently have a point for pleasure and purpose, but meaning that it's pleasurable and purpose to take baths, because I can take a bath, even though I can't afford a massage therapy. I can bathe, I can take a bath, which I do. I do take baths, sometimes they're an hour long, even more. I've been taking a few cold ones lately. But point is, I moved in 2015, summer, so I've been living there for 10 years, and I've done lots of work, and lots of work, of course, which I've done consequently, and it's, of course, the work, of course, on the side of the things where we are, of course, to be prudently on the go, and to be prudently where we are, of course, with our life, and, of course, affirming our life, liberty, and interjection here as an individual sovereign citizen, of course, to get it on the side of the things where we are now, that it is the way that I predicted it. So my memory, sometimes memory loss is caused, I don't know if I was a junkie. Was I a junkie before 2014? Maybe I did lots of drugs. Maybe I was consuming alcohol. I remember being attacked by surprise, and I gave myself a new deadline until September 11th to go retrieve the archives. I was viciously attacked. I survived a vicious surprise attack. I fell, I hit my head on the concrete. The Montreal Metro had a dislocated right arm, right shoulder, and I was bloodied up, full of blood, and I went to the Jewish General Hospital. The Jewish General Hospital, they gave me some medication, so I was like kind of in a coma. I guess I lived my Silly Empire episode, just like Julius Caesar, I guess. I'm a man, I'm a woman, that's beautiful. And it's just like, hey, that's beautiful. When my friend paints like that, that's nice. I love the love sign. But nonetheless, but I guess Julius Caesar was every man's woman, every man's man, and every man's woman, and every man's woman, and every man's woman, and every man's wife, every man's husband, and every woman's husband, and every man's wife. Something, because he was, I guess, bisexual, just like I am pansexual. And you know, if you're black, you're white, you're 18 plus. We can do that good loving, rainbow dragon loving. I am also not just a neurodivergent aspie, but I'm androgynous, pansexual, part of the LGBTQ community. I'm not looking for romantic. I already proposed to somebody. I guess I'm going to propose a few times, just like Joe Biden. I knew deadline to propose the third time, September 11th at 11:59 p.m. EST. So that's the new deadline to propose again, the third time. I guess maybe I'm going to get a third note, and I won't propose until I get until the 11th. Each month on the full moon, maybe I'm going to propose each time on the full moon. Is September 11th the full moon or September 10th? I guess I'm going to propose the full moon for September, because the full moon for Leo passed. So September full moon, I guess it's on the 9th, maybe on the 10th, and it's feast for me because I goddess it up, you know. I have a weird, also what's considered maybe a strange spirituality, but I don't know all the answers. I am a mystic. I believe in reincarnation. Somebody sometimes was born a man and woman, as in the USA. I was born 3 times post 7076. Once I was born a woman, twice a man, served in the same United States Armed Forces twice post 7076. So I served in the United States Army twice, and sometimes I gotta say now to the National Guard, you gotta keep it sportsmanship. And I'm no Trump supporter. As a matter of fact, it's a Dragon versus Trump event. You know, if you don't know that, since 2018, I've been challenging Donald Trump to a boxing match on the Canadian-US border because of the imposition of those tariffs. And my brothers and sisters, you know, the king is absent. My brothers and sisters, the king is absent. My brothers and sisters, the king is absent, you know. So that's why we have to go, and we have to, of course, appellate and all the things which we have now. Thank you, public workers, for the be nice here. Oh yeah, this is what I was looking for. You should imagine, this is the privilege of civilization. The privilege of civilization was my thesis back in 2023. You see all this? Imagine all the aqueducts which were underneath, you know? All the aqueducts, how much aqueducts were built there like that. And it's quite something which were built, you know, the aqueducts underneath. You think about that. To build the brains and muscle who built it, thank you. This is new, but the structures is really in the 20th century. Just to have this running water, which I'm gonna now hydrate by. I'm really grateful because it enables me to have a safe journey to without dehydration to my second home, the Mountain Mile Royal. So LOVE. Oh yeah, I got a little bit of wet, but I guess wet is okay. Ah yeah, that feels so good. So sometimes I meditate, you know, all the underneath the ground, the sewers and how they were built, and the brains and the muscles to get all those aqueducts connected for us to have running water in our homes, you know. Civilization really is a privilege. You can imagine all the brains and muscle, you know. But it took some brains and engineering and technical know-how, and then the brains and muscle, you know, muscle, some vigor, I guess, energy, and vigor, some muscle in the sense. So back to I have trouble remembering my life prior to 2014. I don't know if I was doing drugs or sometimes alcoholism. I have flashes of trauma. And see, this is a geopolitical issue for Quebec. Somebody had put those stickers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and those stickers are of course pertinent to somebody who would vote yes. That's pertinent to the Quebec referendum. Somebody who would vote yes, you know. Somebody who would vote yes, you know. Somebody who would vote yes. So that is what we're going to discuss it. But last time, of course, okay, you're safe to cross. Yeah, you're good to go. 10 seconds. So last time, we discussed the geopolitical implications. Or anybody wants to commission a more in-depth, because I guess this is more relevant for the North American Collective, a potential referendum for Quebec separatism, which of course happened in 1995. October 30th, 1995. October 30th, 1995. That's when the vote occurred. 1995, October. 1995, October. And of course, the other day, I was discussing with an autistic, and he said he would vote yes. So that was quite interesting, actually, as a matter of fact, and this pertaining to the vote that he would actually vote yes. I would vote no, but I guess I would have my theories, and I would say that in theory, I believe that we would be able as Quebecois to do it, but myself, I would vote no. So would I stay? Would I not? I guess because I am for that red North American fusion of the 63 rather than. Because to see how my brain now works, integrally on this point event in time, I try to calculate or what those trucks are carrying. So I know that truck's going north, that truck's going south. Maybe it's going to the border. But how many trucks are now across the highways of the 63? The 10 provinces, 50 states, and 3 territories. The 10 provinces, 50 states, and 3 territories. The 10 provinces, 50 states, and 3 territories. The 10 provinces, 50 states and 3 territories. So we're going to merge the 63 to the Imperial Republican Democratic Complex. And of course, that one might be carrying bacon, cheese, bread, butter, anything that could be edible. And how many now? Now, as I calculate for a total security total service, total defense, my new Dragon 911 protocols for total North American complex security service and defense integration. I try to calculate and try to estimate, of course, how many are carrying bread, butter, bacon, cheese, romaine lettuce, beans, bread, corn, tortillas, canned food, canned good, grapes, my favorite. And it's always an estimation, right? It's a calculation, but that number is actually across the 63 exist in time as a reality, because I would say every hour, if we would have to have a system where we have the citizen integration theory applied, and we would have to monitor everything that's coming out and in out of the 63 by planes and by the boats, because it's coming in by the planes, right? Even planes are coming in now. Trucks are on the road, and of course we got boats. So part of my new 911 Dragon total security, total service, total defense protocols is to have citizens where they can access that information. It will be public, and of course it was public monitoring of all the transportation activities of all our supply chains, where citizens can have access in the public. For example, here there would be a massive where citizens can go, and they have massive telescreens, and you could monitor via webcams all across the 63, the highways and the trucks, and we would kind of know the information of what's the bacon, the fast food, the cheese, the hamburgers, all the goods that are being transported. And then we would see also the ports, so we would have integrated security protocols for total security, total service, total defense, the CIT theory, citizen integration theory, part of the new 911 Dragonomy protocols, which I have explained in the past briefly, because of course, such as my theory as the total mobile defense theory, TMDT, when it becomes a system, I cannot of course discuss it too much because it's a matter of binational, and even binational mostly for Canada, United States, because that's my theory for total defense and security service and defense, of which of course the TMDT, total mobile defense theory, the TMDT, which when it has an S, it's of course applied into action. That is of course the theory which has to be implemented, but I cannot discuss it too much because it's national security sensitive. And of course in my past collaboration with CSIS, Canadian Security Intelligence Service, the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, the Canadian CSIS, the Canadian Security Intelligence Service. Please, when you hear the ambulance or the firefighters or the security services, police services, when you hear that sound, the alarm, just slow down, slow your car, look left and right. If you hear the alarm of the ambulance or the firefighters, the fire trucks, or if you hear the alarm for firefighters, police services, anything of that genre, just be mindful. And look at those beautiful flowers. Be mindful to just slow down a bit. Just slow down some. Look around you, because you know it's the responsibility in the public. And so the total mobile defense theory, I do not discuss it over much. I kind of introduce it, but since it is national security sensitive, I can only discuss it with high-ranking security officials such as David McGuinty, the Minister of National Defense, and Big Hexet, and of course other officials of the NSA, National Security Agency, and CSIS, and of course the security apparatuses of both Canada and the United States, or the armed forces and the police security services, can be discussed more in depth. But besides that, I cannot divulge too much of it on YouTube because it's national security, national. It's actually not really national. It's concocted for binational, integrated North American, and I started in 2017 to develop it because, if you know my story a bit, I was depressed and suicidal for a few years. I thought I was gonna take my life away. You know, which I almost did. Because it was really hardcore being depressed and suicidal, and that's something which touches Aspees a lot. And what got me out of being depressed and suicidal was crossing Canada coast to coast. You know, crossing Canada coast to coast. in 2017. So I'm celebrating 8 years today since I crossed Canada coast to coast. And that's really the reason why I am $10,000 in debt. I do not own credit cards. I don't have credit cards. I have a credit line, and that is the motive why I got kind of into debt. But it was worth it, because I guess if not, I would have been probably, I would have taken my own life. I was depressed, suicidal, And crossing Canada coast to coast, I have the tickets. I'm auctioning them for $1 million to give half of my anonymous sister, auctioning them for $1 million, to give half to my anonymous sister, auctioning them for $1 million. Turn your heads left and right when you cross the street. Turn your heads left or right. You cross the streets. This is something where we have to turn your heads left and right. Always important, and because, like I said, the brakes can malfunction. The citizen might press the accelerator instead of the brake by mistake. And beautiful flowers there, cute. So I was depressed. I was suicidal. 2017. 2 years, 3 years, close to, like 3 years. Yeah, I could say 3 years, maybe 2.5. Yeah, a long time. Enough. Quite enough. Big depression. I was overweight. And I crossed Canada coast to coast, 2017. That event made me have a realization, a flash. I started working out, training, exercising, and that's beautiful flowers there. So I started working out, training, and exercising, and of course, I've been exercising, working out, training ever since. I actually even created my own workout training program system. Got to put on the steps. Gotta leave my thank you. I got press here called Saint Antoine on Gray Street, and that is of course something which we gotta get our own prudence in it. To the side of where we cross the street, it's always the dimension that they have to stop, that they have to stop, and it's something which you gotta press that stop pedal, and of course something which you have to appellate, and of course be also mindful in the public that you have yourself and myself and all of us vis-a-vis respectively with each other. Not to get too academic, scholarly about it, but fundamentally we have those assistances which of course the individual and the collective have, of course, to do that fellowship in many ways, respectively, right? Now we have to be mindful of each other's security and defense, and security and liberty, and of course to congregate and to get it on the go with that, and of course to appellate all the situational awareness where we are, of course, to do and to to get signalized where we can pass here, where we can pass, of course, to be, and to have, of course, this work where we got to pass on the left and on the right, and here we can go, I guess, on the side there, and we can go by that side. We do an assessment where we go by that side or that. Yeah, we're gonna circumvent it, go around it, and go change a bit of their trajectory. Salute a little bit of workers in the public there. Is that Canada? Oh, that says Canada, Canada, Canada on it. It says made in Canada, so which is good. And imagine all this work here which has been done, and all this work here which is being done there to do that, and all this, of course, labor and steel which is of course on the side here. I love those machines. See, on ASPE, I would try to calculate the ratio of those parts there. The ratio of those parts. So thank you, workers in the public. This is geopolitics as well here now on XYZ. Of course, the situational awareness that this is, of course, also part of the geopolitics. Our geopolitical complex is, of course, predominantly dependent on public works, because we got the highways, right? So even the private has made paradoxically money and finance out of the many public works. Think about that, because of the, for example, transport companies have made a lot of money because of the highways which were built to massive works. So that's why fundamentally my, of course, protocols, theories, and initiatives are mostly for a public-private partnership, and that is something which, of course, we have to do on the go with that, and of course to have to appellation where we have, of course, the integration aspect, of course, to get it on the go. So that is, of course, something which we got to fully, of course, be integrated in, of course, all the domain and the complexities, of course, where we got, and all those complexities where we got are, of course, that we got to turn our heads left and right here left or right in a prudent way. And then of course, that's of course the aqueducts, which of course were built in the interjection, and we have of course to build some more, and of course something where we got to get drilling under that, and that is something which we have of course to do underwater, and that is something where we have to get doing an appellator where we got that informational awareness to get drilling on that, and to get drilling on the left and on the right, and on the left, right and Z, and to do it on those butchers, the betchers and bakers and all those, of course, to get it on the XYZ, and that is something which we have to get doing, to get done with that too. That is something which we have to get doing on the drill, and we have to get doing for all those butchers and bakers and nurses and doctors and firefighters and all those, of course, to get it on the go now, you know. Yeah, public workers mainly, public workers, rock and roll for the public workers. And I'm glad I took this route. You see how much brains and muscle is being done, of course, to fundamentally integrate, of course, in the appellation where we have, of course, consequently, of course, to get it on the drill and to get it all those who are on the go, you know. And that is something which fundamentally integrates us with all the aspects, of course, where we are now, where we are in these domains too. I guess we can just gonna go round about it a bit, and gonna finalize on Asperger's, and gonna get to the DMA, direct military assistance in action. So again, keep in mind that when I discuss geopolitics, some terms, terminologies are going to be a bit scholarly, maybe academic. They might not be so. And you have to devoid a little bit of the more emotional, sentimental values. So you have to kind of separate the sentimental, emotional values, of course, when they are integrated in the plateau, of course, to be emotional and sentimentality attached to the geopolitical theories and analysis, which I do make on a daily basis, and then which I formulated for a while, and then which I keep formulating or keep discussing integrally and interjectionally on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, and then on a long-term basis. What's important for you to keep in mind is that I predicted what's happening now geopolitically in 2019. See, we're gonna get a little bit of circle here. I guess we're gonna go full circle, and my life starts, I guess, is the fourth time I restart this 2025. Summer 2026, and of course the interjection, of course the appellation of the fundamentals is that my life recommences in many aspects. Is the fourth time, I guess, and sometimes memory comes back, sometimes it doesn't, but more important is my work, not just as dancer, rock and roll, but in geopolitics. So although there are separate types of activities and works, my artistic work, my dancing work is of course more compartmentalized and parallel to my geopolitical work, because it's still me, androgynous, pansexual artist, athlete, philosopher, geopolitical theoretical analyst, theorist, thinker, and strategist who loves that red, and who is not perfect, who lives with scars, with trauma. And for 2014, I survived a vicious surprise attack, and I thought I was gonna die of COVID also. 2020, 2020. Because they tried to take me out. I have these strange, bizarre, nightmarish dreams and unspeakable deeds, I guess, committed. And that is something which, of course, we got to drill, and we got to get a little bit of that sunshine. Always get good to get hit by the sun a little bit, and that is something which we got to get that Batman on the go with that, and got to get it on that rock and roll with that. And that is sometimes what we gotta get doing with the drills, Gotta get those big machines, and gotta sing some rock and roll for the public workers. Public workers always get a little bit of that drill for them, and meditating, of course, where we are, that red and white. And yeah, I like what's being done here. My youth, the children going safely about, and that's what I love to see, the youth safely and going about joyous. Put me a big smile on my face. You just gotta watch for others, Just gotta watch for others, and that's what we're gonna get doing, And that's what we're gonna get doing with that, man. Look at those. It's identical. I love the combination of red and white. I gotta say that is a good one. And we gotta get a little bit of that public works, and the public works fundamentally, of course, to get drilling on that go, and that is something which we have, of course, to get a little bit of that XYZ, and something which we have, of course, to admire, and of course to integrate, and to, of course, be mindful about in our daily activities, that we are actually dependent on the works, of course, which have been established. I was about to lose my hat as I lost the 49er hat. I wouldn't mind it. I guess I got a little bit of that windy, and yeah, sometimes it's super important just to exercise. I'm doing now, and it really puts a big smile on my face, and of course that is what I gotta get doing with that, and that is something which we have, of course, to the third one exactly identical, the red and white total identical there, and we gotta get those public works, and that's how we love seeing the public-private partnership. We gotta work together here in mass public works with that, and that is something what we have, of course, to appellate, of course, to do. But that is, see, you got 1, 2, 3 over there, exactly like this one, red and white. That is just something else, and that's what I love to see here. A lot of work, public-private partnership is all that's being required, of course, for us to do, and we need mass investment in the public sphere to rebuild the bridges, the aqueducts, and that one, you got 3 exactly the same, 1, 2, 3, and what's interesting about it is that it's red and white. See the red and white, just like the Canadian flag, you got that red and white on the go, and that is something which we have, of course, to do, that red and white, and of course we have to, of course, to appellate there for the left and the right, and of course to consequentially be prudent, of course, where we got to get drilling on that, and that's how we have, of course, to sing, of course, rock and roll, and that's where they got to get onto interjection on the workers, and it's always a workout, and always a workout, training, exercising, and see? And I'm going to check out how broke I am. I'm going to check out how broke I am here at the bank. Gonna go to check how broke I am just for a second. We're gonna go to check how broke I am here. Let's see. Well, my rent's paid, I guess. Gonna go check how broke I am. How broke we are. But I got kisses by the goddess, marching steps, rock and roll, and geopolitics, and nobody rivals yours truly, but somebody will, because I'm not the best, but when it comes to geopolitics and dancing, that's where yours truly excels the most. And yeah, financially stressed, but I'm grateful. Okay, let's see. A moment of truth. My goodness, let's see. Okay, so I'm in the minus. I can go up to minus 500, so I'm already in the red for that. So my rent's paid. But I'm supposed to get September 1st, I'm supposed to survive on $875 or $79. So that's to pay my rent, pay my electricity bill, pay my phone. Because that's how we rock and roll with that. And of course, the debt, you see that I have $10,000 in debt, $10,000. So that's my only stress, I guess, now. Besides that, I'm fine. But I'm always open for work. I mean, 24/7 open for work and categories, and it's constant change. I'm a bit upset that they took the hygienic products here. They should have kept the hygienic products, you know. When it's here, I'm gonna take one of these. Right, when you wash the hands here, you know. Usually wash your hands right there. Here, you wash your hands, but now they took it off. I think they should have kept it, because the germs, bacteria, microbes, Now I have to disinfect because I touched my hand. I touched my hands, right? So I touched the screen. So I touched the screen there, right? So because I touched the screen, it could be put when I pressed the buttons. So having pressed the buttons on the machine, it enabled that there's microbes, bacteria, and germs, and I don't know what COVID was, but I cannot rule out that it was I'm gonna use this made in Canada. Antiseptic hand sanitizer gel. Enough. I cannot rule out that COVID was a bioweapon. I believe it was transmitted from snakes to human beings, so count to 20. It's cold. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 more with that. And I guess this is also practiced in case of a bacteria bioweapon, and more I'm labeling fentanyl as a bioweapon. It doesn't make sense that fentanyl, of course, kills so many people, because it's counterintuitive for fentanyl to be a drug to me. More and more fentanyl seems like a bioweapon than a drug, because it doesn't make sense that fentanyl is killing so many people. How come fentanyl is killing so many people? It's killing so many people, And of course, it could be a bioweapon, and we can have different bioweapons, but those are the bioweapons which, of course, we gotta get on the impositions of. And I don't know, I'm triple vaxxed. The children are happy, I'm happy. I guess they're innocent, eh? Us, I don't know about us. I guess we got bad, maybe some of us more than others got some bad karma, eh? Myself included, maybe. That's right, who knows? Who knows what I lived in before 2014, eh? Maybe that was my punishment for me, live there and forget my memory and have these scars, this trauma. Watch it, careful, it's not worth it. It's not worth it, it's just a balloon. So of course these situational complexes where I'm gonna go exactly check that machine out. That machine looks a little bit like rock and roll, and HAMM, that's just something where we have, of course, to interject. And we have, of course, to appellate, of course, in the situational aspects where we are, of course, now in the domain, of course, to be, and of course, to be appellated with the consequential, of course, prudence where we are, This is a beautiful machine. Now my Aspie brains goes with asking questions. Where was it fabricated? What's the category of it? But it's a very beautiful machine. So now we're gonna go towards the mountain, because we checked how broke we are and how financially stressed. If I make $1 million, $1 billion, $1 trillion, I'm gonna give it to my anonymous friend, who I'm gonna propose again. I guess it could be a special type of marriage, 21st century. Special type of marriage, I guess. that is what we are here, and that is what we have, of course, to be on the implementation, of course, of this beautiful machine. I fell in love with this machine. I want to know more. HAMMM. I want to know more about this machine, how it operates, how it works, when it was built, of course, when the quantifiable aspect was built, and when it is now. What is it? Okay, it has a purpose, of course, to level, for leveling. So brains and muscle build this machine. Sometimes we take all those tools of civilization for granted. All the tools for civilization, of course, we take them for granted sometimes. And this is a tool which enables us. Imagine, of course, because we, of course, had the potholes. So the potholes, of course, get it on the potholes, and you can drive safer. So you can drive safer because of this machine, and the brains and the muscle, of course, who build this machine, and they're doing there now the work, is you can drive safer here. So you have to have a certain respect and gratitude for the public workers, because if the potholes are so big, and sometimes maybe it's dangerous if you go on the potholes, and imagine you're with children and you go boom, boom, boom in the pothole, and then you or driver or passenger seat or the children in the back, they bump their heads. So it's also safety in many ways if you are to make a little bit more further assessment, such as, of course, well, this is, because it's on the side, it's not that bad, but when it's on the road and you drive a little bit, also depending on the speed, there's different variables, and of course outliers of situational awareness, whether it's on the highway or here, of course, where the car in theory cannot go that fast because there's several stops, but still, right, still there's an added layer of dimension, that added, of course, layer of dimension, which, of course, we consequently have, of course, to do, and we have, of course, to appellate where we are, of course, in the dictum of the society and the plurality of all our being, of course, consequently, that we are involved now in the public. And myself, my engagement as a thinker, philosopher, artist, athlete is to do that meditation. I guess it's more intellectually instinctual, and it's both instinctual and intellectual, but the instincts come from me, of course, being an independent geopolitical theoretical analyst and theorist, and of course that is just something which we have to do in the appellation, of course, of the salutations, where we are, of course, consequently, of course, in the prudent, of course, to get it on the go with the situational awareness, where we are, of course, involved in mounting the mountain, now going up the mountain in all the topics, of course, where we have, of course, to consequently, of course, be and getting involved ourselves where we are now, of course, and where we will be tomorrow, because now we're in a tough position, and I predicted what's happening now back in 2019 geopolitically. So now we're going to go full circle, and we're going to go back to Asperger's, finalize Asperger's. Again, to be Asperger's, we have three main problems, and those three main problems are related in this sequence. So the three main problems for Asperger's is lack of friends. Asperger's don't usually have lots of friends, or keeping friends is difficult because it could be a level of engagement and toleration which can be harder for some. So Asperger's, we do not have lots of friends. For my solution, I don't want to waste your time. Don't waste mine, please. We won't waste each other's times. But friends with benefits only. I'm not looking for romantic engagement. I don't have sexual frustrations. If I would have, I would discuss them openly. If I would have, I would discuss them. I would discuss them openly. But I don't, I don't. If you're black, white, black, you want to be of age. You want to be of age, of course, you want to be of age on the side. Then that's different. But you're going to get carded. If you come living with me, or black or white or black, you're going to get carded. You're going to get carded. So you're going to get carded, and you're going to have to show proof that you're 18, that you're 18. That you're 18 plus. Basically, you're gonna have to get proof that you're 18 plus, Basically, just like going in a club, like buying, of course, whatever you're gonna buy. If you want to buy liquor, if you want to buy booze, if you want to buy, of course, whatever your purchases is that you make. If it requires an adult certification that you're of age, such as cigarettes. Here in Canada, we legalized cannabis back in 2019. Wait, look at those bees. Wow. Bees. I thought it was only 4. There's more than 4. See? Look at those. Anyways, so whether you go to a club When you go to a club, of course, you get carded, right? When you go to buy liquor, you get carded. When you go to buy cannabis, we legalized cannabis in 2019. So in Canada, all cannabis is legal, weed. It's been 2019, October, 29, something like that. Something 2019, 5 years since it's been legal, cannabis. But of course, it requires you to show proof, an ID. So I'm going to apply the same principles myself. Just to be clear, because I want it to be never any misunderstanding. So whether you're a man or woman, and black or white or rainbow, white and black or rainbow, you know, we got that. Michael Sam didn't play in the NFL because he kissed his white boyfriend when he got drafted. I guess Michael Sam, they can come to me and we can play some rainbow gridiron, not a problem. But Michael Sam didn't play in the NFL because he kissed his white boyfriend when he got drafted. Michael Sam didn't play in the NFL because he kissed his white boyfriend when he got drafted. Michael Sam didn't play in the NFL because he kissed his white boyfriend when he got drafted. So back to Aspies, we have these problems. Those 3 problems. I'm gonna get out of the way because I see somebody with a carriage and it's going down and the weight's being pulled due to the gravity. And this one has to be filled because this pothole there, see? I was talking to the camera. I just mentioned that that's a security risk with somebody who goes with the foot. It could have been you turning and your carriage, and I was just assessing the security risk for that. Be well. You're welcome. So that has to be filled because it's a little bit of a. We need some public. You just understood what I said and said thank you with that, and that is something which we have to get it on the go and we have to get it on now. Slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down, and that's all we got, and that's all we got, and that's all we got, and so you got to get out of the way with the car, you know. It's better to stop, just pause the car when you hear. Pause the car, just slow down. Slow down. Slow down. See some youth there holding hands, and that's good to see in the public. Young love, and you know that is what we gotta get doing on that, and that is something which we do, you know. In the consequential, we gotta turn our heads, and that is something which we do, you know, on the consequential prudence of all the interactions what we do, and we gotta get doing on that drill, you know, to get it doing. So just slow down, slow down, slow down. Slow your car, look left and right, and get out of the way of the firefighters and the firefighters. Slow down. Somebody make them some good loving, you know. Somebody make them some good loving. But the firefighters, super important. Firefighters, ambulance drivers, brothers and sisters in uniform. You know, as I sing that. That is, of course, the appellation, and we gotta send some love. You know, it's not all about the money. Nuclear war could start tonight. Why did China and Russia increase and modernize their nuclear warheads? China in the past 4 years and in the past 5 years, I would say since February 2020 in COVID, they of course increased their nuclear armaments, and of course they gotta get that consequentially, of course, in the side of where we are now, to get it and understand fully the position where we are. That I predicted what's happening now back in 2019, and so gonna turn my head left and right, turn my head left and right, turn your head left and right, and when you hear the ambulance, the firefighters, like you just heard now, the police, slow down, look left and right, take your foot out of the accelerator, slow down your car, slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down, look left and right, you know. Just added citizen safety, and of course that's something what we have, of course, to do, and to be understanding about certain things where we have, of course, to be prudential about, and that's something where we got to fully understand, and take action in consequence thereafter, to consequently take, of course, action in the point, of course, where we are in the situational awareness, where we composition, and where we are of the composite, individual, sovereign citizens, part of the collective. So as individual part of citizens of the collective, in the public we have added responsibilities, duties, and obligations. If I can be less intellectual about it or less scholarly about it, of course we are to have a difference added of responsibility in outside in the world, where we are in the world, and when we're not at home. When we're not at home, there are certain things which we have to be aware of, such as myself, although I have a certain condition with itches and I apply a cream, I still don't have the $300 to go officially to the dermatologist to check it out, and it's something that I live with, and my gonna watch who's around me on my clit, dick, clit, androgynous 50-50 sometimes goes rocket up. There's a big patch which elongates as my clit dick gets into a rocket erection, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It's like maybe eczema or psoriasis, and I went years and years ago to check if it was a sexually transmitted disease, but it wasn't a sexually transmitted disease. Came out negative. It's just it could be a tissue with a scar or something. That's beautiful. Thank you, public workers. So I guess I'll update. Not that it's important, but don't try the services of China, secret services of Russia. Don't cross neither the Atlantic, neither the Pacific, neither the Pacific, neither the Atlantic. Best stay over there. Don't come in the 63, the Empire, let it be, and geopolitics. Gonna wait a bit and gonna hydrate, and we're gonna go around about to the mountain by a special way. Hydrate, HYDRATE. Oh yeah, that is of course the beautiful flower spots here. I just love the combination. Good job on this, the yellow. I love that garden, and I certainly appreciate beautification of the city is something which we have, as this one also. But that one has more color a bit, so that one's a bit more for my taste, of course, in the terms of colors, what we have. But that is something which I love, seeing the beautification of the cities. And we need to invest in the beautification of the cities of our empire, and there's sometimes where we have, of course, to categorically, of course, interject, where we got the appellation, of course, to consequently be mindful that that also requires some brains and some muscle. It requires some brains and some muscle as well, some arbeit, labor, work, and consequently that is something where we have, of course, to be in all the domains where we are consequentially about it, and consequentially prudently about the situational aspects where we are, of course, and where we have, and some things where we are, of course, in the domains, in the domain of the,
I forget that song.
In the situational awareness where we are now loving and doing and being at liberty, and safety goes together, eh? Beautiful blue. Not to be overly inclined, but to balance them, and I guess also correct the public and the private. My brothers and sisters who are millionaires, billionaires, don't be so selfish, Don't be so selfish. It requires a public and a private partnership, and of course that public-private partnership is of course inclined towards the 63, which I'm going to discuss. So now I'm just going to finalize on Asperger's. First and foremost, it's not a mental illness. Asperger's is not a disease. Asperger's is not a disease. That's where we have to start. That Asperger's is not a disease. right? And then we got three main problems, Aspies. Lack of friends. Like I said, for me, the solution is friends with benefits only. The other problem is high unemployment and suicidal tendencies. The unemployment rate stands at more than 80%. 80%. That's more than 80%. More than, so 4 out of 5. 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10. That's of course 4 out of 5. 4 out of 5. 4 out of 5. 80%. Can you imagine for Aspies? 80%. That's 11 times higher than the neurotypical. For every one of you, which are the majority of the population, paradoxically, there's 11 Aspies which are unemployed. The problem is keeping the jobs. I know, of course, I had many jobs, many employments myself. So having had many jobs, of course, is keeping the jobs. Keeping the jobs. So the maintenance of the jobs are, of course, something where we have, of course, to consequently do. To consequently also take action with that, because it's unacceptable that Aspies, which other community do you know that has 80% unemployment rate? Which other community do you know that has 80%? 4 out of 5 are unemployed. You tell me one. It's really hard to find a minority community such as we are Aspies, because we're less than 1%. We're less than 1% of the population of North America. That we stand at 80% unemployment. Okay, yes, don't tell me about outliers of people with Asperger's who are a few exceptions who are billionaires. Don't tell me about that. And if you're an Aspie billionaire, give to fellow Aspies and employ as much Aspies as you can, because it's totally unacceptable for 80% of the Aspie population to be, because the neurotypical place is made for neurotypicals, right? For neurotypicals. So our brain blocks when it comes to gossip, because we are mostly, of course, solution. So if you are to gossip about it, if you are to gossip about something, our brains kind of does not compute, do not fully process that information. So we would, of course, process it in a manner that is intellectually, or of course in the manner of we can find some solutions, or how we compute the different solutions where we are at par. The different solutions where... Peux-tu passer par là? I can pass by there. So that was French. I said I could pass by there. So that is something which we have, of course, to do, and we have, of course, to appellate, That is something which we, of course, fully, integrally in the position where we are, of course, the situational awareness, where we are now projected to be safe to cross. That's basically why the motive for my question was in French, is it safe to cross right here? Because you never know, maybe it's best to just do a little detour, 5 other minutes and 4 other minutes, is something that, of course, we have to do. So, of course, something where we got to appellation, of course, to go, of course, to gotta get drilling on that, of course, to gotta get doing on that, so that is something which you have to do, to get it on the go, and that is something which you gotta be careful there. I got some stops. So this neurodivergence, I like this red. This red is nice. The color is nice. Yeah, so that is something which, of course, we have, of course, to be mindful about in the workplace. That the workplace is basically made for neurotypicals, because certain things such as gossip, for example, we do not fully compute. So our brain processes information differently. Thus, Aspie brains, or probably many Aspies, would block, would not know how to communicate in such a gossip circumstances. We will probably be saying, well, can we do some solutions? What can we do about it? Or the person's not here, not discussing about the person, not his ideas, his principles. And so our brains, are different. These mutations of the brain at the microscopic nano level that account. And the cause of Asperger's is inconclusive. We don't know what causes Asperger's. We don't know. Fully, we don't know. We don't know what causes it. Environmental, hereditary, biological, or certain other conditions which causes Asperger's. We do know the characteristics, also so-called the symptoms. But there's not symptoms, of course. There's no symptoms or no characteristics. And of course, there's no symptoms or no characteristics. There's characteristics, traits, but no symptoms. So it's not a symptom. Don't leave that there. That could be dangerous. or a child, and so if it's there, so drank the public workers, but pick it up, and put it. Or maybe that person who passed, I didn't see. No, I didn't see anything. I was focused so much on Asperger's and geopolitics that I didn't notice it was that person who passed me that put it there. I didn't notice. Just noticed the person when I got close, and then when I got close, I saw that bottle. But I need to get more gloves, because if I touch bottles, I don't know who drank from it and left it there, and there's the bacteria, microbes, and germs question. So I guess more and more when I go on my walks, I guess I'm gonna carry some gloves, because if I am to pick up stuff like that and keep disinfecting my hands, because there's microbes, bacteria, germs, and just like when I went into the bank, I don't know how many people touched the little things before me, and personal hygiene. And yes, I get dirty, especially when I rock and roll, but I get back clean. I'm not perfect. I have flaws, vices, and I don't pretend to be without lust or anything like that. I'm just not frustrated in any manner. I'm just, I don't like violence myself, I don't like violence. I just don't like violence, but I'm hypervigilant. I'm hypervigilant. So hypervigilance, I guess, is part of all the trauma, and I guess my trauma from the past with the scars that I live on. But I'm pretty joyous. I can be, I guess, as many aspects, intense, super concentrated, super dedicated. And the problem is lack of friends, high unemployment, 80%. Okay, please don't tell me about no actors who made 44 million for a movie there. Don't mention, because I know there's some actors who have Asperger's, but they make 44 million a year. Well, I survived on less than $11,000 last year. I survived on less than $11,000 last year, and I'm gonna have to survive September with $875 because I don't have the special disability. The disabilities in Asperger's is. So here's the paradox. We're less able. I'm not gonna use the word disability. We're less able. And knowing certain social, we have to be told directly, right? But you offended me, or I feel like such a way, I'm a bit concerned. You have to be verbalized that, and then we can take action accordingly. Because otherwise, it's hard for us to know and fully understand. And the empathy and compassion, we have it, but we would show it by action. And as you see in some of my videos, when I say that I'm financially stressed or that's so good, the person says, I'm sorry to hear that. And then my response is, well, why are you sorry? It's not your fault. So, but that's just the way, it's a normative communication, the kind of the social filters, which we don't have. But if you see sometimes I get responsive when somebody says, I'm sorry to hear that, because that person is not liable for my financial stress. When I say I'm okay, but I'm financially stressed. So then that person is not directly, I'm just gonna get out of the way here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So of course, turn your heads left or right here. Well, actually they can come, so there's 2 stops there. And of course, that is the situational complexities where we are now, of course, and all the love aspects of this singularity where we are, of course, engaged in. Now, of course, to be pertinent to all the life events where we are as an individual, of course, with HFA, high functioning autism or Asperger's, where our differences noted. And I've been diagnosed by several people for several years now, but with some experience in healthcare, in the healthcare system, in the, what's called healthcare or in the health environment. Several people have told me, but I did not want to accept it. I said no, until finally about 3.5 years ago, I said, it makes sense, and this is what I am. I'm an Aspie, and I guess there's no medication, so it'll always be, because you can't medicate Asperger's. So that is just the understanding and the integration of knowledge of being different, and how I have to work on it. So it's working on the characteristics. So basically, of course, the other fundamental aspect of our engagement and our relationship is that we have these words, which we sometimes are academic, formal, intellectual, philosophical, which we might employ in the matter, of course, where we are to be employed, of course, in all the characteristics and the concordance of our daily activities and daily life. And so the other matter is, of course, where we are finding ourselves in the position that as individual aspies, we tend, of course, to lose jobs, to not keep jobs, to not keep jobs, to not be able to keep jobs for a long time. So that looks like a snake. That looks like a snake. See? Almost like a snake anaconda is there inside. It looks, of course, like a snake anaconda, but it's not one. But I don't know if it is. It could be, of course. It could be. It could be. And here is a bit dangerous. So I got a pass on the side, and that was a bit blocked on the road there. So I couldn't really pass by that side. But I guess you circumvented. But it's more, for me, less than for somebody who's having a baby carriage or a carriage, because otherwise they'll have to cross on the other side of the street, right? If they come there. So I guess for somebody who's carrying a carriage more than for me, I can, even with my clumsiness, when I focus and when I bust dance moves, when I rock and roll, I guess I'm good at that. So the problem is lack of friends. Lack of friends is a big problem. But for me, that's the solution. Don't waste my time, I won't waste yours. Friends with benefits only, and paradoxically, parallelly, the high unemployment rate, and the other one, third one, which I lived. I guess I live them all, but it's high depression and suicidal rates. It's 9 times higher for Aspies. I was there. Crossing Canada made me establish a strong esprit de corps with my fellow Canadians, Quebecers, and that got me out of being depressed and suicidal. I'm celebrating 8 years today. So that event changed my whole life. In other words, that event changed my whole life. That event changed my whole life, That event really changed my whole life. And that is, of course, the dynamic which we are, of course, to be engaged and to do in all the situations where we are now, to get and to cross by the side of the street. So the high unemployment rate, of course, it is at 80%. 80%. 80%. 80%. 80%. 80%. That is something which is unacceptable. 80%. That is a high unemployment rate. 80%. Can you imagine that? Looks like storms are coming. 80%. 4 out of 5. And again, don't mention the Aspies who are movie stars or have Asperger's and, they're... But okay, maybe they had their struggles as well. I guess a lot of them did, but just don't mention you want me to work for you as an artist, a commission to work, then I'm open, and I wish I could get my anonymous friend a house here, or preferably by the river. By the river. A house here for me would be close by the mountain. Build a house of the dragon on the mountain, and let's build a 4. So yeah, those are the 3 main problems for Aspies. High unemployment rate. Very high, more than 80%. It's unacceptable, 4 out of 5. High unemployment rate. High unemployment rate. High depression and suicidal rates. High depression and suicidal rates. So this high depression and suicidal rate is exorbitant. It's really exorbitant. It is really so high that it cannot be accepted at 80%. At 80%. It's like the storm clouds are coming. See? Maybe. I don't mind a storm, I don't mind lightning, and although I love the sun, a little bit of sunshine, I gotta say a little bit of this. Sometimes the storm clears, I guess. And I love those bushes there, how they are. And I just love these are so nice. White and pink, just quadrupled my smile. Especially these flowers there. And I wish I could give my anonymous friend a house. I wish I could give my anonymous friend a house. I wish I could give my anonymous friend a house. Just get her a house. This one, we could split 50-50, or one by the river, one here, I guess we're on the Ramsey, and got some beautiful flowers, which I love. So, gonna close the chapter on Asperger's. You can check it out for yourself. Needless to finalize that those 3 problems, I have the solution, because I'm always open for business. I'm always open for business, you know. Always open for business. And 24/7 always open for business. Always open for business, you know. Yeah. Always open for business. 24/7. And my financial stress aside, I am just a piece of dust, but I lust, and I'm not sexually frustrated, you know. I'm not sexually frustrated, but if I would be, I would discuss it. I've been in the open as part of the LGBTQ androgynous community for many years now, I guess. 8 years or something like that. 9 maybe even more. I mean, since I can remember, I guess. 2014. I know my life prior to that. Spring 2014. But that is just the loving side of the things, where we are now, to make, of course, a certain situational awareness where we are integrally and in part, to, of course, the side of the things where we, of course, get on that domain to get and ascend a little bit of the mountain, my second home, you know. So that is something which we have, of course, to do in all the motives and the appellations where we are, of course, now. Consequently, and of course, here, you might not know friend of the house, the Ramsey and Cedar, and that is something which we got to get it doing and to get it on that LOV side of things, and we gotta get it on that side of the things to get on those to get on those beautiful architectural designs we are there, you know, kind of down from the Dracula's movies. Kind of makes a little bit of think of that Transylvanian type of down, eh? Looks like that Castle Dracula. Maybe some people here are descendants of Vlad the Impaler, and maybe I was a fan of vampires, because I got not just Canada tatted up, but on the side I got a vampire tatted up. Vampire. Vampirius, Draconis, Rexus Imperiatus. I spit a little bit of Latin, but anyways, past lives incarnation, now today, 26th of August, financially stressed, grateful, thankful my rent's paid, electricity bills paid, got food and coffee, and I'm happy. And I'm going to my second home, the mountain. We're gonna go top and come back roundabout and go watch some. I was supposed to start watching the third. I was so stressed and busy with my routines and aspects. We have these ritualized like routines that I wasn't able to, of course, start to watch season 3 and season 4 of the Umbrella Academy. I watched season 1 and the second one, and it ended on the second one with quite something. I'm not going to divulge anything, but it's my favorite series post-COVID. I had COVID in 2020, February, March. Mid-February, I started feeling sick. Between mid-February and March 2020, I was really sick. I thought I was going to die, and I really was sick. I thought I was going to die, and of course, that was something which I got to survive, and then I got triple vaxxed, 3 vaccines. That's it for me, and I don't know what caused COVID. I cannot rule out that it was a bioweapon. I guess many cannot, even to this day, pinpoint the origins, paradoxically, just like Asperger's cannot be conclusively known what it is, the origins of Asperger's, what it is. So now I'm gonna go into what I know most, parallel to rock and roll and dancing being my favorite sport, although I love all sports, fitness activities is also my special interest. Gridiron, one of my top four Super Bowls is Super Bowl 47, aka Blackout Ball, aka Bro Ball, aka Harbor Ball. And before I go into geopolitics a bit, the four main buildings which I will to construct and build. Let's build the 444. The one the 2, the 3rd, and the 4th, in whatever order. We start building them right away on the Canadian-US border. Start building, of course, the North American People's Imperial Coliseum, aka the Global Dragon Army, for, of course, by the Dragon Army, of course, to be conclusively the Imperial Coliseum, Imperial People's Coliseum, of course, the Imperial People's Coliseum on the Canadian-US border, to be 11 times bigger, of course, than that Caesar Superdome. Caesar Superdome was before known as the Mercedes-Benz. Before that, it was known as the Louisiana Superdome. It changed names just like I changed names several times. And of course, that congruency, of course, is that my favorite Super Bowl, along with other Super Bowls, were played, fought, and battled out there. And one of it is the Hardball Bowl, Super Bowl 47, also known as the Blackout Bowl. One of my favorite Super Bowls. And of course, my 49ers lost by 3. My first 3 favorite Super Bowls is when 49ers won, 1985 and 89, and in the 90s. So those are what I love as gridiron. But the 4 buildings that I will to build, together with the help of the construction workers on steel toes who build the cranes and who build that construction work right now, help yours truly build on the Canadian-US border, the biggest ever big sports arena, Canada-United States complex, to be joined as a massive public-private partnership, and where me and Donald Trump are going to fight on the Canadian-US border to inaugurate the building thereof of the biggest ever mega sports arena complex ever built, the Imperial Republic's Coliseum, the Imperial Republican Coliseum, Canada, the United States on the Canadian-US border, to be the biggest ever sports arena complex, to be 11 times bigger than the Caesar Super Bowl, to have sports events 24/7. Sports events 24/7. We're gonna get sports events 24/7. I'm just gonna go a little bit there. I'll bet to check a little bit on the skyscrapers. Gonna check that's downtown Korea, Montreal. We can't really see my favorite one, the pyramid, but construction workers, salutations, LOV to the construction workers who go on those cranes, who build with the brains and the muscle and the beam and the steel. They build those concrete and they go up and down those cranes, and they continue to build buildings across the 63 and housing. We need more social housing, and on the Canadian-US border, we're gonna build the biggest ever sports arena for sports in perpetuity, where, of course, me and Donald Trump are going to inaugurate it and have a big fight, because I've been challenging, of course, Donald Trump since 2018. 2018, of course, that was my challenge, and I got in that backpack the gloves, you know, the gloves, of course, which were donated, and of course those donations of those gloves are red. I'm auctioning them for $1 million, to give half, of course, 50% to my anonymous friend. That is gonna be the million. And I got 4 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Just in time, I guess. Sometimes you gotta jit just in time, and just gonna drop a little bit of that foundation there and keep it up, and gonna go to the top of the mountain, all the way there, my second home, Belvedere Conjunac, which I love to come, and you see that beautiful architecture style there. And we're gonna also build parallel to the biggest ever sports arena complex. We're gonna, of course, build the Forgotten Goddess Temple. We're gonna build the Forgotten Goddess Temple. We're gonna build, of course, the Forgotten Goddess Temple. The Forgotten Goddess Temple, and that's what we're gonna get building with that. We're gonna build a Forgotten Goddess Temple, which is gonna be 11 times bigger than 11 times bigger than the, so the Forgotten Goddess Temple, beautiful red, the Forgotten Goddess Temple is gonna be 11 times bigger than it's actually called the St. Joseph's Oratory. So I will to build a Forgotten Goddess, GODDSS, because I got goddess it, and you know, the goddess doesn't need me to build her temples. The Forgotten Goddess doesn't need, because she's got the pyramids as temples and tombs of initiation. So the goddess has the pyramids, and she certainly doesn't need my or anybody else to get her ass to build her temple. But in North America, to be 11 times bigger than the St. Joseph's Oratory, you know, to be 11 times bigger than the St. Joseph's Oratory. I will to build a forgotten goddess, GODDSS, forgotten goddess temple, to celebrate activities, because you know yours truly dragon also gets that switch conversion transformation, turning into that priestess, especially when I dance, because I was a priestess in a past life, priestess Hannah now. I orated the great Rethria, orated the great Rethria to Lycurgus. I orated the great Rethria to Lycurgus. I orated the great Rethria to Lycurgus. Orated the great Rethria Lycurgus. Orated the great Rethria to Lycurgus. Orated the great Rethria to Lycurgus. In a past life, as a priestess, you know, that is something when of course we have, of course, to say, and of course we have to appellate, you know, past lives, incarnations, and of course it's something where we have, of course, to, of course, appellate integrally, you know, the positions where we are to take a place and a direction, to build a fort, a forgotten goddess temple, the North American, the Imperial People's Coliseum for sports in perpetuities, especially a great place to channel the aggression, especially a great place to channel the aggression, super important, a great place to channel that aggression, and the Imperial People's Coliseum for sports in perpetuities, and parallel the pyramid, house of the dragon, the house of the dragon, the house of the dragon, the house of the dragon. Here you gotta stop, because it's pedestrians, although it's one way, you turn your head left and right. So we're gonna enter by the side, by that side here, by the big stairs, like that, because the other time we entered by the, last week we entered a lot by that, and there's several ways to enter here, the place, saluting the nurses, the doctors, changing some diapers, helping in the CHSLDs. I worked with the elderly. I think it was 3.5 months, like 3 months probation period, but Aspies is difficult for us to maintain long-term employment. It's very unacceptable. Anyways, build the four, the pyramid, house of the dragon, the pyramid, the house of the dragon, to be scarlet, and crimson, our shades are red, and of course the house of the dragon to be parallel with the, please don't leave that trash there. I hope the public workers are gonna pick it up. I really have to bring gloves next time, and I guess something. If there's people with children, and they're gonna put their hands in there, and you know, just public hygiene, some public safety and hygiene important. You know, put it in the garbage there. There's garbage right there. So because we got public sanitation, you know, and plus we pollute here. You know, it's part of the mountain. You know, corporations give some 10%. We're gonna do the DRT, implement the DRT, and mass finance, fitness, mass finance, tourism, super important, of course, to get doing on that and get doing on that XYZ. And that is something which, of course, we have to implement in all the directions where we are, of course, to get consequently, of course, our life, affirming life, liberty, and in pursuing of happiness. To be honest, I'm happy. I'm just effing financially stressed, and I live with all the scars, with my aspie androgyny, 50-50, beautiful. See how it looks? Beautiful skies, man. Beautiful skies, you can see there. That brings me some joy, and now we're gonna let that mane out, because we're gonna go atop the mountain, and time to mane it out. Time to mane it out. Time to mane it out. And anybody want to finance that I go up and down these stairs a few times, 100 times, and not that perfect, has some flaws and vices, but let's build the fort together. Let's build the fort, and now we're gonna get into the DMAA before we get into the DRT. Once I reach the top of these stairs, so leave the baggage at the door. Please don't pollute. That could kill a rabbit, that could kill a chipmunk, that could kill a raccoon, that could kill amour, fait. So I really don't like when people leave trash. I give the benefit of the doubt. I've been cleaning here by myself individually for years and years and years, and it's super important. I guess I'm gonna have to bring a little bit of that next time. I'm gonna have to bring a bag to clean here, because we need to do a lot of cleaning, you know, fundamentally, to do lots of cleaning, and that is something which we have to do here, you know. That is something which we have to do, you know, for Mother Nature. Mother Nature, oh my gosh, there's just so much. Well, some of them have, I guess, poop. Maybe they're poopy bags, that's different, but, you know, those have to be the good ones. They're compostable, because poopy bags, some of them are compostable for the dogs or whatever the case may be. So leave the baggage at the door. We're going to discuss the DMAA, Direct Military Action and Assistance. Now we're going to enter geopolitics. Just keep in mind the will as a manifestation of my dream, the dancing goddess in the dragon kingdom, calling all willingly loving to support and pledge your allegiance, the DMA, Direct Military Assistance, you know, get it on the drill, and of course to manifest in all the directions where we are. Of course, now manifesting all our life affirming values to, of course, get the circumference, of course, to pass by the side and get in the wilderness and get a little bit of that wilderness loving, of course, to interject and to get it on the left and right, and to, of course, appellate to get now drilling on the side of the things where we are, to get, of course, all that aspects of our daily living integrally, you know, in the domain and the life where we are, of course, to get, of course, all that sunshine piercing through those dark clouds. God knows, my King, the Pope, the Son, that I'm heading towards. My Pope, the King, the Son, who now shines and now sets. Yeah, see? Clouds, black, dark, gray clouds around about it. And of course, now as I ascend to the mountain, I'm gonna have, of course, to be mindful that there might be stormy weather coming, and that is something which we got to circumvent and to get it on the go now, of course, in the plurality, of course, of our verbatim and all the civilizational complexes which we have, of course, to be aware that you do not pollute here. You do not pollute. Please don't throw trash, don't throw garbage, don't throw plastic, don't throw, of course, anything which has to be, of course, thrown away in the plastic and in the manner, of course, which we interject our directionals, of course, to be now concomitantly to all this mountain where we are now, appellative, and of course to get that appellation to get now for the environmental action. Theory has to be put into practice and action, right? In other words, don't leave it here. Anything, trash, garbage, put it in the trash if it goes in the trash, or the recycling if it so goes in the recycling. So now I'm gonna just discuss the DMAA. The Direct Military Assistance or Action is related to NATO. It is relevant since NATO's foundation inception. It does not apply to geopolitics pre-NATO. It is related, in matter of fact, to NATO countries and the NATO North Atlantic Treaty Organization member alliance, right? Alliance. It's not going to be an in-depth discussion for that. Commission, finance, blah, blah, blah. Financially stressed, so I'm always open for work. The DMAA, the Direct Military Assistance or Action, the DMAA, the Direct Military Assistance and Action, of course, states that the direction military assistance and action, of course, is the formulation of this philosophy and doctrine of the direct military assistance or action is that due to the direct military assistance or action at different levels, it has several levels of involvement and measurement, but that potentially due to this DMA, direct military assistance and action, which when it is taken outside of NATO, so it's NATO member countries or the NATO alliance as a whole, or individual NATO member countries assisting or getting involved with military action or assistance. So not humanitarian. Again, not humanitarian. This has to be understood, and I got to give an evaluation with my anonymous friend, which the discussion which we had, which she of course counteracted the stories, the side of course of how it could be perceived that it's not empathetic or humanitarian, but it's not that it's not that is another aspect of myself as an individual who is for world peace, who is a humanitarian, who is charitable and does empathy and compassion by action with my neurodivergent manner that because of Asperger's is less verbal, but it's more action-based by concrete actions. But this DMAA it has nothing to do with humanitarian action. So it doesn't involve when a NATO member countries provides, for example, food assistance to countries which are at war with each other, right? Which are at war with each other. XYZ, whoever country. It's not about humanitarian. This is when a NATO member country or NATO alliance or several countries from NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization member states, when NATO decides to take what I call DMAA, direct military action or assistance. So action is, for example, planes bombardment by NATO member country planes, aircraft, F-16s, for example, bombing in Libya, F-16s bombing, for example, in ex-Yugoslav states, whatever, Croatia, Serbia, Bosnia, Herzegovina, in those areas. And of course, the other one is action or assistance. Assistance is by providing armament, military weapons, such as Canada and NATO member countries have provided in Ukraine. So Ukraine is not part of NATO and was not part of NATO when Russia invaded and attacked and declared their military special operations. Again, I'm not on the ground. I don't have 300 men and women, dragons and dragonesses to assist, to visualize, to make an assessment, make a geopolitical, military, strategic evaluation of exactly all the situation on the ground, right? So that is something which has to be component of the situation, of course, where we are, our involvement, and where we are, of course, to be now in the appellation here. As we see this beautiful tree here, and of course we have to consequently be involved in the DMAA that is strictly has to do with military assistance and action, right? Direct, meaning that it's either the whole NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization member countries, militaries, armies as a whole, armies of NATO as a whole, or an individual army, for example, the US Army, the Canadian Air Force, the German Bundeswehr, the German Army, the French Army, whatever army from the NATO member alliance, which has reached now 32 member states. And of course, before the current crises in the Middle East, Israel and the Arab world, Israel and Hamas, pre-October 7th, pre-October 7th, I had been advocating, of course, that Israel become the 33rd, paradoxically before the October 7th incident, catastrophic event, October 7th. So before that event, and I don't remember where I was on doing 9/11, but from my journals, I remember I was in high school. From my journals, of course, I was in high school. So here you gotta put a step up. See how it goes down like that? It's very steep. So that's why you have, of course, to gotta get, of course, on the left and on the right, and just bend your knees a bit. bend your knees a bit. So it's super important because it's steep. And where we're gonna enter by is this side. But when you enter here, the forest, you gotta beware because there's falling branches, you know. There's falling branches there. So on the side. So you always gotta be prudent, and of course, be prudent on the go, of course, that it is the falling branches which fall. Such as these ones, see? So when you go in the forest, there's a risk. There's a risk there, see? That's the risk of the falling branches, which you can see how big that branch is, which cracked. Seems that it cracked from, see? Maybe from that side. So just be prudent, you know, just be cautious. There's falling branches, and of course the falling branches are, of course, that it is something which you gotta be mindful of, and of course be prudent about in all the aspects where we have, of course, all the societal domains where we have to integrate, of course, to appellate, of course, to get it on the left and on the right, to get it on that, and that is just something where we have, of course, to do, and we have to appellate to get that line, you know. And that is, of course, that is the situation, of course, where we are, of course, to now to appellate that it is something which we have to be mindful that in the public we got, of course, added responsibilities and obligations, and of course gotta get on these rocks, these beautiful rock formation. They always amaze me how, of course, they gotta get it on the go, and that is something which we have to be on the formative aspect, of course, of the level, of course, of being in the space where we are now, you know, in the space where we are now. So that, of course, aspect, of course, where we are in the aspect of our lives, of course, something where we got to, of course, get with the life and be safe, because there's a risk here of falling branches again. See, look at those falling branches. Look at those falling branches. That is just something which, of course, you have to watch out for those. See, they fall from the sky there. See how many they are? This one as well. So if it's windy, now I'm watching because it looks storm-like. It looks storm-like. So if a storm begins, then I'm at risk, and everybody here is more at risk than in the forest, you know. Than in the forest, you know. Than in the forest, you know. Then in the forest, you know. Then in the forest, you know. Then in the forest. Then in the forest. That one's beautiful. In the forest, we're more at risk than in the side of the forest. Then in the side of the forest where we were just there. Right now in the forest, we have added. That's why in my past videos when I encounter people, you see me warning them, either in English or in French, and I explain to them, especially if they're tourists, that there's this risk. The more you stay here, the slower you go. There's an added risk for falling branches. And now as it looks, maybe the storm clouds passed, maybe they're going somewhere else. But as you can see, there's this added risk of falling branches, and I have it on camera. I even almost got it on the side. It didn't hit me, but it was like 44 yards to my right side. And here you kind of see it going down, and see like that, those ones. So sometimes I toss them from the side, you know. Sometimes I toss them from the side. So the slower you go, the more you're at risk. So that's why you see most of the people that I warn, it's not the ones that are jogging or running or marching fast, it's the ones that are walking more slow, because the slower you go and the more time you stand here, the more you're at risk of just calculation, time sequences, and those mental calculations of the risk factor, which is increasing by the more time you spend here, and of course the slower you move, because if you move slower, you're more at risk that it falls on you than when you're in faster speed motion while jogging, running, or such matters as the speed by which you traverse here. For example, he's less at risk because he's faster on the bike than myself. I'm more at risk than my fellow citizen there on the bike. But of course, if it's not stationary, so if it's in motion, it's different, right? If somebody's in motion and if somebody's not in motion. For example, you see some branches, see that branch? Yeah. So you see several branches which can potentially fall there, which you can see are partly cracked already, right? So, or some of them you can even see they're hanging by a thread, waiting, of course, to fall because of the wind, right? Because of the wind. See, like that one. Although, you know you're at risk here because of the falling branches, eh?
What is it?
So you see the branches?
Yeah.
So you gotta be careful here if it starts windy. See, like these branches, sometimes they fall from the sky. See? Yeah. So the more you stay here, the more you're at risk. And I have it on camera. Sometimes it just goes down. Right. So for your safety, the more you stay in the forest, the slower you go, the more you're at risk.
Okay, but how do you prevent it?
So the faster you go. The speed, and if you see that it starts to be windy, you're more at risk. So you have to prevent it by being immersed in if it's windy, if it's stormy, and to look up sometimes, because some branches are ready to just fall. And I lived it myself. It didn't fall on me, but often, because I come here often, I even go deeper and I see them fall.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And there's no signs. There's no signs. There should be signs when you come in, you know. Yeah, they're not that. The trees are not that healthy, so the branches are cracking. You see all these branches? See, those were, even myself, sometimes I toss them because I come here almost every day, and sometimes it's me just tossing them and they fall.
Oh, okay. Thanks for the heads up.
Bye. Be well. See, like this branch is really problematic here. See, look at that. See, you don't want that falling on you. And see those there? That's mortal danger there. That's mortal danger, you know. So I guess maybe that's why I survived being viciously attacked by surprise. I get maybe to warn others and maybe save a life here. My life for somebody else. In the past 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 years since I've been coming here, I guess. Well, I only started warning people about, I guess, 4 years ago, because then I noticed it more and more, and I think the trees and the storms have intensified, and I've helped crack some branches. But see those branches there? See, look. Yeah, those are big ones, eh? Those are big ones. Those are big ones. Those are big ones there, you know. So, just, and my fellow auntie, cousin, whatever, consider all Quebecers, North Americans, and all who come to join us here as a big family. It's a big collective family, sometimes dysfunctional, but nonetheless is a family. And I noticed that was the fellow citizen or non-citizen, but we have to treat everybody who joins us here, whether they're citizens or not, you know, to let them know, is walking slow. So the slower you go, you move, the more you're at risk of falling branches. And I lived it. I even have it on camera. It fell several times. Fell right next to me. See, like this one is not that big, but this can harm you from above, because it's also the height. See that one? Now it's ready to fall. See this one? Yeah, they fall here. There's no joke. See, this is proof. So we're gonna toss it there. But that one with high wind. See, look, this one can come on somebody who's here, high wind, and then crack. It cracks and it falls right on the person. Right on the person. See, that one's danger right there. See, that's a proof there. So for the safety, see, that one's about to crack. That one's about to let go. That's once it's very windy and the wind is gonna increase. If it's a storm, this one, check it out. I think next time, or if next week, if it's a storm today or tomorrow, this one is probably gonna fall soon. This one's about to fall soon. So this one can potentially go on the side of somebody who comes by this side there and fall on the person there. It's just what it is, right? It's just the realities of being. And that one also, see? Yeah, it's just the reality. That's it. You don't argue with it. It's just how it is, you know, and just how it is fundamentally, you know, to get it on the go with that. And that is something where you have, of course, to be prudent about. And of course, this prudence is that you have to be aware that here you're more at risk, you know. So being, of course, that you're more at risk in, of course, this place, where you have, of course, the risk where you got to have, and of course this risk is something where you have, of course, to be evaluating yourself as your pace dictates your security levels. Because now I'm marching, so I'm more secure than if I would be walking slow. So the slower you go, the more you're at risk. The more time and speed, the slower you go, the more time you spend, the more you're at risk. Basically, to simplify it. Simplification, keep it simple, I guess. Or as some say, dumb it down. back to the DMA, the direct military assistance, and of course the direct military assistance and action. Back to the direct military assistance and action is a consequential prudence, of course, where we have, of course, to get the appellation, of course, of whatever we have. See, these ones too, of course, the direct military assistance and action are, of course, consequentially, of course, involved in all the situational awareness, of course, where we are situational and being aware of the planes where we are here in this safety situation. So my fellow citizens who are walking safer is because you're walking faster. That's basically it. So the direct military assistance and action has to be fully understood, of course, from a geopolitical perspective. From a geopolitical perspective. And of course, that geopolitical perspective is, of course, something which, of course, we have, of course, to get appellated in all the implementation of all our knowledge, of course, to the DMA, the direct military assistance and action. Now we're going to focus on that. So the direct military assistance and action, direct military assistance and action has to be pertinent only to NATO member countries. It has nothing to do with humanitarian. It has to do with when a NATO country decides to assist or take action militarily by arms. And that creates a certain consequence, repercussions that those nation states, countries can, of course, potentially their governments, respective governments or others, it could be years later, that, of course, due to XYZ factors, such as migration, that certain diaspora community groups, which of course can establish certain transnational criminal syndicates, as we have seen, of course, that there's a growing transnational criminal syndicate organized groups in Canada, which the RCMP has warned us for since 2015 now, since the past 7, 8, 9, 10 years. Of course, they have warned us, of course, of growing transnational criminal syndicates. And we have seen from last year, and now there's something else in the news, that there has been a consequential, of course, informational awareness, of course, to be of the consequential prudence, of course, that there has been discovered the greatest ever fentanyl, of course, laboratory, which, of course, has been expanded in 2024. In, of course, October 25th, 2024, the biggest ever super lab, fentanyl super lab, has been, of course, established. Guys, you gotta be careful. If you sit there, you see that branch?
It's gonna fall down.
Do you see that branch?
Yeah.
It's gonna fall down. So if you stay on the bench, just watch that branch, hey? You're welcome. Just see, that's for their prudence. That branch gonna fall down, so that's what the prudence are. You want to falling on the children. That one there is about to fall. See, it's cracked. It's right there. It's cracked. See. So I told them if they're gonna sit on that bench, they're at risk. It's gonna fall right on them if it's a storm, if it starts out of nowhere, right on the bench there, and potentially I saved the life, I guess, because I guess I survived maybe for that reason, to save the child there, to let them know and knew what it's about. So that branch is about to fall. So see, that's the bench, and if you see that, I have to write to the workers there, and of course, hello. Be careful if you sit on the bench, because you see that branch there.
Yeah.
You see that branch there?
Yeah, I'm gonna Google that for you.
Yeah, it's about to fall, the branch. So don't be careful on the bench. Bye. That is something which, of course, you have to, of course, be aware of, and that is, of course, something which people. Now the branch, now it's windier. See, now it's windier, and of course you're not listening. You're not listening. See, you're not listening on the branch. Okay, gotta be careful. The branch is about to fall there. Don't stop there. Calculation the risk. You're at risk. You're at risk by stopping there. You're at risk. You're at risk. You stop right where the bench is. Right where the bench is. You kept going, my fellow citizen, but yeah, because if it starts windy, if the wind starts and then you have the branch falls on you. So that's, maybe you should put a sign there. If the branch is about to fall, or we should take it off, you know. That branch is public safety, you know. That's what it is with that. And that branch, of course, is a risk. And that is something which we got to get on, of course, on the traversal side of the things where we got to get it on the go. So that is something which we have to meditate upon. And I have to let people know, because let me know. I'm an aspie, but I'm trying to be a good Samaritan as much as I can, you know. By action, again, by the action, by verbalizing and telling people that that place there's the falling branch. So back to DMAA, direct military assistance or action is, of course, related, of course, strictly and foremost, of course, to the to the military alliance of NATO. So DMAA can cause even military alliances to be strengthened and fomented, such as the direct military assistance and action provided in Ukraine has played a role in the solidification of the Russia-China military political alliance, or the Russia-China military political alliance, or the riots of the Russia-China military political alliance. That is what it is with that, and that is what we gotta get doing on that drill. So the Russia-China military political alliance has been further exacerbated by the DMAA, direct military assistance and direct military assistance in action. The direct military assistance and action. The direct military assistance or action, or it could be both. It could be both an assistance or an action taken by a NATO member country, which of course would make the inclination and kind of trigger the consequence that other nations would align themselves and foment, solidify a military alliance of their own, a geo-regional military alliance because and due to this DMAA, direct military assistance or action, which is related only to military action, not humanitarian. Because when you provide arms, you potentially can kill the adversary indirectly, can potentially kill the adversary indirectly, you can potentially kill the adversary indirectly, by, of course, providing that special, of course, case, of course, to create this paradox where providing direct DMAA or doing an action, direct military assistance or action, by doing it, one can cause and trigger, of course, that potential reverberations and apparatus, of course, of the positions where we are now. We're gonna get a little bit of that hydration, HYDRAT. I always say it, but I gotta say it again. I admire the brains and muscles to build this, and you know, all the brains and muscles to bring this up. So to make it that we have water here atop the mountain, it goes against the gravity and against the rocks, and being on top of the mountain now, something that I got a LOV here for the North American Collective, it's always something good. And of course I need myself to get a little bit of that hydration in my body. HYDRAT, hydrate with me. Let's go rock and roll. Back, I guess. So is that a hawk? We saw the hawk, that's an omen, by the way, flies, yeah. So the DMA, the direct military assistance or action, is of course the proposition, and it's a theory, and it's not just a theory, but it's actual, a theoretical, it's proven by the events. And it can not only foment that discord, but it can foment other nations, civilization, states, or organized transnational criminal syndicates groups originating from those areas where NATO undertook to do DMA, direct military assistance or action. It could be bombing, bombardment, or sending direct troops, or bombardment by the F-16s or other planes. Look at that beautiful river. That's where we are, surrounded by the river. By, of course, also assistance is by providing arms to the opposing military forces. So this DMAA applies, like I said, to NATO. It is fundamentally a more scholarly intellectual, has a lot of in-depth theories to it, and of course with special special cases, and of course of those special cases which are primarily and fundamentally involved in those cases which are fundamentally relational only to NATO member countries. So it's not related to non-NATO countries, but those non-NATO countries by which NATO undertook direct military action. Of course, it could be something where, of course, we have to get fundamentally inside and, of course, integrate. And this has to be recycled, so there's no recycling here. I'm just going to go on the other side to recycle it. So this direct military assistance or action is consequently where we have, of course, the appellation where we got, of course, the fundamental aspects of this DMAA, which, of course, are outlined in the directional propositions that this DMAA can cause certain, of course, antagonistic feelings, hostilities, and even help to the development or hostile diaspora community members, which by according to my principles that I discussed in the past videos, that we need, of course, a public-private partnership for the peaceful reconciliation with non-NATO aligned member diaspora communities. And of course, those that appellation what we got. Here we got that papers, man. Papers. Okay, this has to be there. Yeah, that has to be paper. And I guess that's paper. Contenant plastic. This is plastic. Okay, so that's where it has to go, and that is something where we have, of course, to apply. So, of course, the fundamental aspects of the representation of our dynamics of the DMA has to be completely integrated and fully understood, in that devoid of the nuances, just general application, because there's many examples, which, of course, I can discuss, I can develop if anybody wills to commission, but generally, of course, to understanding, of course, the fully operation where we have, of course, to get undergoing, of course, of all the theoretical protocols of all, of course, the machinations, of course, of all the theoretical propositions of where we have now that it is, of course, aligned to the NATO territorial complex. So the NATO territorial complex or NATO member countries which undertook direct military assistance and actions are, of course, fundamentally the aspects of this beautification as this beautiful. Isn't this beautiful here? That is just beautiful. See? Wow. This is 10 on 10. That is, for me, that's 10 on 10. Whoever did this garden, that's a big 10. That's a big 10. Big 10 here for me. That's a big 10. That's a big 10, you know. That is a big 10. Especially these ones. These ones are so soft. From the Forgotten Goddess. The Forgotten Goddess temple, we have to appellate that these are super nice. Look at that. Wow, 10 on 10. 10 on 10. So back to the direct military assistance or action, it is fundamentally something when we have, of course, to be, and that is something where you have to be doing on those appellational complexes where you have to go now. Look at that. That is my favorite skyscraper here. Beautiful skyscraper, you know. That's the pyramid. And you can see, I guess south is the United States. So it'll be Vermont, Maine, New Jersey, New York, but a few kilometers away you can see the mountains. You can see the mountains like that, you can see the mountains like that. And that's all we have, of course, to be, and that's how we got to be, to get on the appellational conflicts, of course, where we are. That is something where we have, of course, to appellate, and that's what we have to do, you know, to do, of course, on the sides of the things, and to continue our march now in the back. But that is what I will. This is super good, and that is super good with that, and so they have to get doing with that. And this is a great garden here. This is super nice. And this one is so nice. This one is a 10. Look at that. This one is a big 10. Whoever put these colors here, wow. Wow. That is what it is with that. And that's just, I wish I would have forgotten Goddess Temple here to get a little garden like that. That gives me so much joy. This is my smile quadrupled. So of course situational complex where we are, of course, in the situational complex. Of course, the dynamics are that the DMAA theory is actually for now, and for the future of the NATO member complex, as I'm of course advocating for my own theories to be implemented, which we're going to discuss now. But it is crucial, and some of it is secret, of course, cannot be discussed, overly discussed in the public so much as I'm putting, of course, on the public domain, of course, to get it on the appellation, you know. That is just something which we have to confluentially do with that, and that is something which, of course, have to be done with that. And of course, understanding. Of course, this understanding has to be, of course, understood as much as one can understand it. So this understanding, of course, requires a little bit of information, of course, as is relational, and of course the information relative to all the aspects of all past, present, and perhaps future NATO involvement when it relates to the DMAA, the direct military assistance or action. DMAA. It's a scholarly, complex, academic, rhetoric, intellectual, philosophical, realistic, real theory, but it's not necessarily a theory in the sense. It's a theory with an accuracy of real events and real consequences which have occurred due to the DMAA. For example, the direct military assistance and action vis-a-vis Ukraine by NATO member countries has, of course, propelled the Sino-Russian alliance to solidify China and Russia, to solidify their alliances in the fundamental aspects, of course, of their relations in the military aspects, of course, and all the military equipment which was sent. So this is an example of direct military assistance or action. The direct military assistance or action. DMAA, the direct military assistance or action of NATO member countries, or NATO as a whole, vis-a-vis such conflicts such as Russia-Ukraine is the more recent one, but we can go back to Libya. We can go back to, of course, Yugoslavia, and we can go, of course, relevant to other conflicts. So that is just something which, of course, one has to be fully propositional and fully understanding and aware, of course, of the geopolitical realities vis-a-vis the philosophy known as the DMAA, the direct military action, and of course all the consequences of the direct military action when we have, of course, vis-a-vis their propositions and vis-a-vis all their intellectual capabilities of where we have to apply it, and we have to be aware of the potential consequences, reverberations of DMAA, direct military assistance or action, which has been in the past, is present, and perhaps future involvement of NATO vis-a-vis other conflicts. Now to the DRT. Now we're going to discuss the DRT, the debt refusion theory, as is related to our North American complex as Canadians and the United States, as Canada and the United States, because my DRT theory, debt refusion theory, has to be implemented binationally. Both Canada and the United States, of course, have, of course, the same theory. The DRT, the direct debt refusion theory, affects Canadians and my brothers and sisters in the USA, where I was born 3 times in past lives, previous incarnation, in the same manner, due to four main problems, economics, which we're going to discuss once we, of course, oh, that's the hawk. I think that's a hawk right there. Yeah, that's a hawk, see? Look at that. That's a HAWK. That's called a hawk bird. See how it flies, of course, interjectionally. So now we're looking, of course, at the south. That's the south, and you can see the mountains. And that's my favorite skyscraper, the pyramid. And, of course, you can see how that hawk, see? HAWK. In French, that's an épervier. See how it flies? We're going to zoom on it a bit. Look at that. HAWK. See how he flies? I'm glad I spotted it. That's my totem bird, my favorite bird there. The hawk. HAWK. We have a lot of hawks here, but it's rare. Sometimes you see them more often. You see them sometimes in flocks, but we have a big hawk population. They're all over the mountain. It just disappeared into the summer. Anyways, So yeah, we have hawks here if you're interested in hawks. I love how they're flying. Of course, they are my favorite bird, and that is something which of course we have as hawks. So now we're gonna go up. Of course, I'm gonna get to the right. So of course, it's something which we have to discuss in the matters, of course, of the debt refusion theory being fundamental. And just gonna get out of the way there so that there's prudence and there's safety. Get a step on the go, and that is something where we gotta be aligned with that. So the situational awareness, of course, of where we are is, of course, that the DRT theory due to the four main problems, which of course are facing us. Four main problems, economic problems, are of course these four main problems, which of course are affecting us in whatever manner, whatever cycle, whatever order. Somebody might be affected at more times than at other times by these four in whatever consequential order. So the four main problems, economic, financial problems are: one of the problems is the growing cost of living. The bacon and eggs and bread and butter, of course, are increasing in price, right? Growing cost of living. The other one is, of course, the growing cost of rents. Even my rent went up. I'm not gonna say by how much my rent went up. Well, I'm just gonna say that the rent that I pay went up between $6 and $10. Between $6 and $10. Between 6 and 10. So I can't complain. It is even lower than it could have been, but it went up nonetheless. So of course, because it went up nonetheless, that is of course the consequential aspect of where we are now. So DRT, we have to implement it binational. It's part of my bipolar geopolitical theoretical strategy for the total BDD, benevolent dominance and dominion, to fuse counting the Imperial Republican 63 complex by implementing the DRT theory. Due again to the fact that we have four main problems which are affecting the majority of the population, of the communities, where of course we have the majority of the communities, majority of the population, including myself, suffer, are strained, kind of strangulated, like a snake almost, by these four. Growing cost of rents. Mine of course went up also. Growing cost of living, cost of bacon, bread, cheese, eggs, price of everyday goods is going up. Those two. The third one, or in whatever order again, is the growing or the stagnation of the salaries. The salaries are stagnated. That's why you see more and more strike action. The salaries are stagnated. So the stagnation of the salaries, and the fourth one, in whatever order you want to place them, the fourth consequently could be, or is, or in whatever order these four are placed, problems for the vast majority of the Canadian and my brothers and sisters in the US population and Canadian population, North American collectives, civilizational complex citizens, like myself included. The other one being the growing credit card debt. I don't have credit card debt. I have a RBC bank credit line, as you saw before earlier, that I am $10,000 in debt. So that is my debt, consequently. So these debts affect us adversely. The growing credit card debt is affecting the majority of the population in an adverse, negative manner. So of course that is, of course, just the reality, and of course just the reality of the situation where we are. Of course, to get, of course, the adverse of the situation, the reality, of course, of where we are now. Inside and integrally, in all the aspects of our civilizational complex, where we are, of course, in the domain, and of course, where we are to be conclusive and inside integrated fully and totally in all the domains where we, of course, operate, of course, in the circumstantial prudence, where we are, of course, in the love affairs of where we are, of course, on the dictums and on, of course, the civilizational complex of where we are appellated to be together in the nascent Imperial 63 Republican complex of the 63, of course, as we are, of course, to get going with the DRT, and of course to create it as a mass public-private partnership. It requires all institutions, all organizations, public-private partnership. My brother and sister Scorpio Bill Gates and BlackRock and Blackstone are two financial institutions which merged, split after 1989, but of course they still function integrally, as of course inside my DRT theory, the debt fusion theory is integrated. Inside the DRT, inside the debt fusion theory is integrated the monetary integration theory, which is the financial theory which was implemented in the European Union in the 90s. In the European Union in the 90s. Inside integrated in the DRT theory is actually integrated the theory known as monetary integration theory, which is actually the financial theory which was implemented in the European Union back in the 90s. In the 90s, the European Union, of course, they created, what is that? I just want to go see a little bit of that, those stickers there. Just want to see a little bit of those stickers. I was curious and I passed by one of those stickers. It's not about the DRT, but oh, this is what it is. Sometimes I'm curious about the stickers. Well, oh, the thing is, that's some music. It's red, my favorite color. Yeah. Interesting stickers, I guess. I have some interesting stickers, but I was curious as I passed them by, and I was just curious of what the stickers were. So I guess now we can go by this side because we crossed. So of course the domain, of course, implementation is that the DRT, the debt fusion theory, also includes in it monetary integration theory. The monetary integration theory is, of course, the MIT. Monetary integration theory is the financial theory. The monetary integration theory is, of course, the financial theory which was implemented in the European Union. In the European Union is the financial theory which was implemented in the European Union in the 90s. In the 90s, the Europeans, they destroyed the national central banks. They created a common central bank, the ECB, the European Central Bank. The European Central Bank. Gotta watch it here when I go down. So gotta go on 2 feet a bit. Then we're gonna go up on that go, and that is, of course, where we see the appellation, of course, that what we're gonna do, and we're gonna pass by the side, and that is something which, of course, formulate, of course, to get it on the go, and that is something where we have to get doing, going back on the side, and that's just what we're gonna go doing, you know. So that is, of course, just the formulation, of course, of where we are. So that is just the DRT, the debt fusion theory. Of course, appellates and of course integrates in all the domain, in all, of course, the aspects where we are, of course, to get implemented, of course, in all the situational complexes where we are, of course, now, of course, to situate where we are, of course, now, to get it, of course, in the circumstantial prudence of being, of course, on the domain where we are free. And we're going to secure freedom, liberty, and joy by implementing the DRT theory, the debt fusion theory, for the creation of the UE, of the Universal Exchange. And I love going by this side. Sometimes I go here because I love that red and that heart somebody painted, but you know, you got many places. And it's like snakes all around the mountain, where of course you can go and you can of course appellate and of course congruent of course to yourself, of course in all the domains where you are nascent of course to be. Now under that loving sight. I love rocks here. This looks like it was a fortress. So the DRT includes monetary integration theory. Monetary integration theory is the financial theory, which of course was implemented in the European Union. in the European Union, of course. The EU, the European Union, implemented in the 90s the monetary integration theory, which of course enabled them. They actually destroyed their national central banks in Europe. They no longer have national central banks. They no longer have national central banks. They no longer have national central banks. They have a multinational central banks which operate, says the ECB. The European Central Bank is a multinational, of course, central bank, of course, which operates as a central bank for many countries. The ECB, the European Central Bank. So they destroyed their national central banks. They destroyed their national central banks, and of course they created the ECB, the European Central Bank, which of course formulates and of course states that as the implementation where we are now to that inside my debt refusion theory is integrated that theory which the Europeans implemented in the 90s. So here it is explained. And again, those four problems make it that we have really no choice. But it's kind of the only solution, and the solution is also there can be other solutions, but that is of course the solution, but there could be of course other solutions which are of course related or resemble fundamentally in principle the principles of my DRT, of my debt refusion theory, of course, which is the proposition and the proponent, of course, where we have an appellate, of course, all the constituencies where we got now, of course, to get the implementation of the DRT, debt refusion theory, for the formulation of the said priorities, where we are to prioritize the DRT as a massive bipolar, as the integrated into the is part, consequently is part of the bipolar geopolitical strategy for the total BDD, benevolent dominance and dominion of the world by the fusion of Canada and the United States into the Imperial Republican complex by signing the Imperial Republic Perpetual Union complex, and of course to implement the DRT, which I'm now gonna explain. The debt refusion theory. The debt refusion theory is of course something which we have to explain now. So I'm gonna explain it. So now you know that it of course appellates, of course, the monetary integration theory. The monetary integration theory. So the monetary integration theory is of course something which has to be appellated. Of course, that is something which of course has to be appellated, and that is something which of course has to be implemented consequentially, and imprudence, of course, in the situational awareness of all the things what we have to do. So we're gonna take all the public and the private debt, my $10,000, your $10,000, their $10,000, all the way coast to coast, ocean to ocean, all the public and the private debt, my $10,000, your $10,000, all the public and the private debt. So all of it coast to coast, ocean to ocean, we're gonna convert it into US dollars. We're going to convert all the public private debt of Canada into US dollars, right? All the public and the private debt of Canada, including my $10,000, we're going to convert it into US dollars. We're going to add it with the United States dollar, right? So we're going to add it up, and that money is going to be the initial money supply for a new central bank, right? So we're going to take do the addition of all the public private debt of Canada, including my $10,000, including my $10,000. We're gonna add it all up. We're gonna add it all up with the United States public and private debt. All that debt added up, all the public and the private debt, we're gonna add it all up. That's going to be the initial money supply for a new central bank, and we're going to create a new currency based on the value of the US dollar, which we're going to call the UE. U.universal, E.exchange, U.UE. The universal exchange unit is going to have the value of the US dollar. It's going to have the value of the US dollar, right? So the UE will have the value of the US dollar. So again, we're going to take all the public and the private debt, my $10,000, your $10,000, we're going to convert it, add it all up at first, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, including my $10,000. We're going to convert all the public private debt of Canada into US dollars. We're going to add it all up with the public-private debt of the United States. And of course, that money is gonna be, that money worth is gonna be the initial money supply for a new central bank, which we're gonna create. And of course, we're gonna create a new currency, put into circulation. That's how it requires a mass public-private partnership. My George brother Bill Gates and all big tech, big banking, big tech, and institutions in the public and private security institutions and armed forces, and of course, citizens of all at all levels. A mass public-private partnership is my dream, the dancing goddess in the dragon kingdom, and for our empire, the DRT is fundamental to the core. So we're gonna create the UE, U.Universal, E.Exchange, U.Unit. By taking all this public-private debt and all the money in circulation, we're gonna create a new, the Imperial Bank of the Perpetual 63, as we're gonna fuse Canada and the United States. We're gonna get rid of the border. We're gonna fuse the RCMP and the FBI and the other security apparatuses, forces. We're gonna fuse the FBI and say, get rid of the border, do a great census, see who we can give eligibility to serve, and do a great North American census. Was we're gonna fuse across the 63 a great census, give some amnesty to those who have not been convicted of like 44 criminal convictions in the past 3.5 years. If you haven't been, if you've been convicted of several things, whatever the case may be, 4 things, or everybody deserves second, third, fourth chances, depending on the discernment of the crime and commitment of whatever to reprimand. And we need you to do your criminal rehabilitation in order to build the 44. We're going to build 44 mass underground cities, tunnel structures. In case of a thermonuclear war, we're going to construct 44 mass tunnel structures in case of a thermonuclear war. And of course, we're going to finance citizens' fitness. We're going to create the 2 complementary covenant and cooperative institutions, the Dragon Army, aka the Imperial SSD Legion, integrated with all the Canadian Armed Forces, Security Forces, National Guard, as an integrated security service and defense force, based on my philosophies, protocols only for the SSD. You know how that cadence goes. Only for the SSD. This, because sometimes I like it, the art here, it's okay, but sometimes bikes come fast. So it's in the way of the public safety a bit, because yeah, I like it, but put it on the side, okay, next time. So artists, whoever try to do this for the bikes, because sometimes they can come fast, and it could be my brothers and sisters. You have to move it on the side, because it could be a bit like a public safety, concern. So this could be a public safety concern. So just for security and safety, I decided to just push the rocks on the side, because here sometimes the bikes come very fast. So just do it on the side and where it's safer next time. Maybe do it over there. See, that's more visible, because here when somebody comes fast, maybe do it over there when close to the benches. See. So that's the DRT, the debt refusion theory, which we're gonna of course implement. So of course we're gonna implement the DRT, the debt refusion theory. We're gonna fuse Canada and the United States, create the Imperial SSD Legion, for security, service, and defense. Is gonna be for security, service, and defense. For security, service, and defense. For security, service, and defense. That's going to be the purpose of the SSD as a joint, of course, force. The SSD, security, service, and defense. For the 63, we're going to fuse, we're going to build those tunnels. We're going to mass finance tourism as well, because tourism does great for mental health and super rehabilitation of the complex. And, traveling, people are going to be accorded XYZ hours and days monthly, and they can accumulate to go quarterly, every 4 months, every 3 months, twice a year, 3 times, 4 times a year. I guess 4 times every year. They can be accorded 4 days. So that's going to add up to 16 days, which you can split in 4. 16 divided by 4. 4 days, 4 times a year, each 3 months, each seasons for the 4 seasons. Each season, some citizen above 16, 17 or 18, we're going to do a standard, I guess 16 plus. We're going to standardize and federal unity, and cross more than 16. 16 plus, 16 plus, 16 plus, and we accord 4 days where transport, food and housing in any state that that individual wants to go, that's going to be allowed, and that's going to be financed from the federal imperial project. And of course, as we're going to do the DRT, the debt refusion theory. So of course the DRT theory, that is of course something which of course we have to apply and integrate. So of course the DRT theory, the debt refusion theory, has to be implemented. So accordingly, of course, with the DRT, we're going to do of course lots of good. The DRT, we're going to create the UE, and of course we're going to of course complement by implementing and doing lots of good for the public and the private rehabilitation in this intra-tourism imperial project, a mass public-private partnership, citizens 16 and plus. It's going to be good for rehabilitation, but with entente and deals and the public safety as well. That citizens are going to be accorded each 3 months, each season, basically the 4 seasons, spring, summer, winter, autumn, 4 days. 4 days, 4 days, 4 days. But at the end of the year, they can accumulate. They can accumulate to 16. So if you don't take the 4 each season, you can do 8 and do twice. Or you can take 4 days. So you have 4 days, all expenses covered, which all expenses covered of your choice, Monday to Thursday, Friday to Monday, or you can accumulate, and that means 4 times 4 seasons, that's 16, or you can divide that 16 into 8, make it a full week, so you have a weekend, I guess, and everything is covered. Transportation, food from the fast food, or with a certain amount, of course. We're not gonna be drinking $10,000 glasses of wine here, but of course with wine, with food meals, 3 meals a day, lodging and transport in the terms of the equivalency of XYZ amount of UEs. But you cannot convert it into UEs, really. You have to pay it for your housing, so it can only be covered in the hotels, motels, the transportation by plane or by train or by bus. So transportation covered. So it's going to be a mass imperial tourism project. So that's going to be the accumulation. This is inspired. I started writing the documents post 2019. Correction, actually before, when I crossed Canada coast to coast in 2017. That's of course when I of course directed it, and of course had complemented it of course with the doings of financing tourism, tourism, tourist. So citizens are going to be able to go across the 63, which are going to merge hues, allocated directly, gratitude, benevolence, goodness and kindness of the empire, goodness and kindness of the empire. Each season 16 plus can accumulate each season 4 days, regardless of race, gender, whatever. Also is another empire, income, because if they're financially struggling, or that's going to potentially rehabilitate somebody. That goodness, act of goodness, kindness, and benevolence. And we're going to finance the building of those 44, mass build more hydroelectric dams, get into the Golden Hawk Dome, blah, 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 blah. Rebuild the infrastructure of the North American Collective, rebuild the sewers, the canals, the bridges, mass infrastructure projects, and build the 4. And that is, so that you know, is the DRT and the plans thereof for 16 days a year, or 4 days every season. So you can accumulate, but of course after 4 years you have to use them. 4 years you have to use them, because otherwise you lose it, or something like that. It's gonna have to be a law that you can't accumulate, you can't ad infinitum of 7 years or something like that. We're gonna put some standards, so you have to use them within. It's best if you use them twice a year, and that's it. You can use 4 days. You travel, let's say from LA to New York. I'm going to New York, I'm going to Yukon, I'm going to British Columbia, I'm coming in Quebec. If you're from the States, I want to learn some French, and you come over here from Quebec, you go in one of the 63, of which Quebec is going to be one of the 63, of course. So the Imperial Republican Union. Pledge your allegiance, support the DRT, the creation of the complementary covenant and cooperative institutions, the Dragon Army as a public-private partnership, the Imperial Integrated Security Service and Defense Legion, and of course the Dragon Army, parallel of course with the DGA, the Dancing Goddess Army, the integrated dance league for the environmental education and action, the environmental education and action for the environment, the environmental education and action. That is something which is going to be, of course, to be done consequently. So pledge your legions, for freedom, for joy, for prosperity, for our regeneration, renewal here. From Hawk Island, Montreal, which is going to be converted into dual SSD Legion with Washington State. It's going to be a bi-imperial federal. Well, with the third one is going to be set a new one into the Appalachian Mountains, Appalachians Mountains there. There's a tri-capital triangle in the circular fusion of the 63. So now to that French, because you know we're in that belle province, and sending some love to the firefighters, bakers, butchers, nurses, doctors, and grocery store clerks, all the plumbers, the electricians, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, in the trains, in the planes, those who change some dirty diapers in the daycares, those in the fast food industries, those now security services and firefighters and the bakers, the butchers, the nurses, the doctors, those construction workers on steel toes, going up and down, building some more skyscrapers, sending some loving, of course, train conductors, choo-choo train, and IT workers are going to need to work together in a mass public-private partnership for total security, total service, total defense with some joy. Let there be LOV as well. Pledge your legions. Let me see some rock and roll French. Bienvenue, je suis déjà sur la montagne en vous encourageant à faire l'entraînement physique québécois et québécoise. On commence avec une petite chanson comme je compose du rock and roll, vous savez, au quotidien, bien sûr, avec la condition de neurodivergence où je me trouve. Je suis un peu différent, bien sûr, dans la méthode, la manière quand on communique. C'est quelque chose avec ce que je vis moi-même, une condition qui s'appelle l'Asperger's, soit l'autisme hautement fonctionnel, que j'ai accepté. Ça fait pas si longtemps que j'ai accepté, parce que j'ai jamais voulu accepter, parce que on me l'avait dit, ça fait bien plus que 8 ans. Là. Je pense qu'on m'avait dit assez souvent par des citoyens, concitoyens qui ont de l'expérience dans le domaine de la santé, qu'on m'avait averti, on m'avait pris en note, on m'avait dit, vous savez que vous avez l'Asperger's, tu as l'autisme hautement fonctionnel, tu as les caractéristiques de l'Asperger's, c'est pour ça que tu as certaines difficultés dans la vie sociale ou dans ces choses-là. Fait que j'ai jamais voulu accepter vraiment à dire que oui, c'est pas une maladie, premièrement. Il faudrait savoir, c'est pas une maladie, puis là, parce que ça, là, c'est pour ça que j'avertis les gens, vous voyez, s'il y a du vent, là, ça tombe sur quelqu'un qui font la course ici, là, les branches, tu sais. Il va falloir que j'enlève ça. Parce que quelqu'un qui vient, puis il est en course, puis ça tombe sur eux autres, mais ils sont avec les enfants, là. C'est pour ça que vous voyez que j'avertis souvent. Fait que ça, il faut mettre un avertissement, parce que, tu sais, le vent, il commence à venter, il y a de la tonnerre, quelqu'un court, puis les branches qui tombent ici. C'est pour ça que j'avertis les gens souvent sur la... On m'entend le plus que je puisse l'être. Bon samaritaine, vous savez que je ne fais pas partie seulement de la communauté LGBT neurodivergent. Je suis aussi androgyne pansexuel, je fais partie de la communauté LGBTQ, mais chez madame, 50-50 à cause de mes réincarnations. Donc, c'est des choses que moi-même, je dois vivre avec ces protocoles de contingence, du savoir-faire ici. Puis, c'est ma deuxième maison sur le Mont-Royal. Fait que j'avertis toujours les gens, quand ils viennent, de faire attention parce que les branches qui tombent moi-même, c'est ça que j'ai déjà capté sur la caméra. Puis, c'est tombé à ma droite, c'était pas si proche, là, mais tu vois tomber dans une de mes vidéos l'année passée, puis il y a 2 ans aussi, puis tu vois, la branche tombe. Mais ça aurait pu tomber sur moi, comme ces branches-là, j'imagine, je viens juste d'en parler, mais regardez ça. Ça a tombé là, d'en haut. On parlait du diable, puis de la sécurité ici. C'est ça que je demande toujours, la prudence, puis vous voyez, ça, c'est une branche, là. Ça aurait pu tomber sur quelqu'un, là. Fait que c'est tombé d'en haut, là, vous voyez, ça a craqué d'en haut, là. Fait que, il y a toujours un risque à la sécurité, mais c'est sûr que le plus vite, si on est en course, là, si on fait du jogging, on est en course, on est moins à risque que si, vous voyez, cette petite branche-là n'est pas si grosse, mais quand même, ça a tombé direct sur le chemin, mais c'est assez, bien sûr, pour faire du dommage à quelqu'un. Mais le plus de temps qu'on passe ici, le moins vite qu'on va, c'est que si on va plus vite, on est moins à risque. C'est à cause de la loi de la motion, tu sais. Si on est en mouvement, on est moins à risque. On est moins à risque que si on reste sur place. Puis si on va tranquillement, tu sais, vous voyez cette branche-là, cette branche-là, c'est wow! Ça, c'est un gros danger, ça. C'est pour ça que j'avertis les gens. Si vous voyez dans les caméras, souvent, j'avertis soit en anglais ou en français que ça soit. C'est juste que je connais la montagne, ça fait bien des années dans cette vie puis dans une autre, à cause de mes réincarnations. Vous savez, des fois, moi-même, j'étais né homme-femme. J'ai vécu comme femme entre 1688 et 1735. Mais c'est mes croyances spirituelles un peu, là, la réincarnation. Vous ne devez pas nécessairement croire à ça, là, mais on peut faire du rock'n'roll ensemble, que je suis moi-même artiste, puis je chante du rock'n'roll. Sur la montagne, dans une autre vie, je faisais des poèmes. Maintenant, je bouge la tête. Les orteils puis la danse, c'est le sport que je préfère. Ah ouais, bouge les mains. Le premier ministre de l'Assemblée nationale, il ne sait même pas qu'il est né à la Chine. À qui je parle, je m'adresse. Du rouge, du bleu puis du blanc, c'est Concordia Salus. En latin, la devise. Quel SPVM j'ai servi dans une autre vie dans la police. Là, j'ai rencontré Louis Cyr, les travailleurs publics, et puis les caméras, puis ça fait l'Hydro-Québec, que ça fait de la bouche. Ah oui, le rock'n'roll, je suis fort là-dedans. La composition des chansons rock'n'roll, j'en compose en tant qu'artiste, philosophe et analyste théoricien stratège de la géopolitique indépendant, que je vis avec mes propres cicatrices, mes propres souffrances. Ça n'a pas été facile à accepter, à intégrer, puis surtout à faire le travail vis-à-vis des caractéristiques de l'Asperger's, aussi connu comme l'autisme hautement fonctionnel. C'est sûr que ces différences, ça fait que ces souffrances vis-à-vis de l'Asperger's m'ont causé aussi beaucoup de souffrance, beaucoup de peine, bien sûr, mais pas aujourd'hui. Mon seul stress aujourd'hui, bien sûr, est financier, du point de vue des finances. À part ça, je suis jovial, je suis joyeux, je suis de bonne humeur, c'est juste que des fois, ça va pas si bien des fois, mais des fois, ça va plus bien que d'autres fois. Là. D'autres jours, ça va plus bien. Puis j'ai vécu le suicide. J'étais en dépression suicidaire. Qu'est-ce qui m'a fait sortir de ma dépression? Puis le suicide, c'est traverser le Canada de côte à côte. C'est traverser le Canada de côte à côte. Cet événement-là, là, ça m'a complètement changé ma vie. Avant ça, avant 2017, j'ai traversé le Canada en 2017. Fait que je célèbre 8 ans depuis que j'ai traversé le Canada en 2017. Je suis allé en Colombie-Britannique, à Vancouver, puis ça m'a pris bien sûr 3 jours et demi avec mon ami anonyme par autobus. Puis après ça, on était de retour en septembre 2017. Ça va faire 8 ans en septembre, fait que je commence à fêter 8 ans, puis c'est cet événement-là qui m'a fait changer ma vie complètement. Ça m'a fait complètement changer ma vie, cet événement-là. Je pense que j'allais enlever ma vie, là. Puis pour vrai vous dire, puis je suis en dette quand même de 10 000 $ à cause de cet événement, mais je regrette rien, parce que sinon, peut-être j'aurais enlevé ma vie. Cet événement-là, là, traverser le Canada de côte à côte, ça m'a fait établir un esprit de corps solide avec le Québec, le Canada, puis depuis ce temps-là, j'ai tellement de choses à faire, à voir au Canada à travers ce gros grand pays. Puis je sais pas, quand j'ai tatoué je me suis fait tatouer le Canada sur moi, puis la fleur de lys, parce que j'ai la difficulté à me souvenir ma vie avant 2014. 2014, en printemps 2014, le printemps 2014, comme mars, avril 2014, avant ça, j'ai la misère à me souvenir de ma vie avant 2014. Ma mémoire est bonne des 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 ans, mais après ça, ça bloque. Puis je sais pas si je faisais beaucoup de drogue ou la consommation d'alcool, c'est possible. Je me souviens, j'étais attaqué par surprise, j'ai survécu une attaque vicieuse. Par surprise. Je me suis fait attaquer par surprise. Je suis tombé dans le métro de Mirage, je me suis cogné la tête sur le ciment, puis j'avais le bras droit disloqué. J'avais le bras droit disloqué, j'étais tout ensanglé. Je me suis donné jusqu'au 11 septembre cette année, 2025, pour aller faire des retrouvailles à l'hôpital général juif. Dans les archives de l'hôpital général juif. Dans les archives à l'hôpital général juif. C'était quand exactement cette date-là? Parce que j'ai la misère, c'est comme un bloc, c'est comme un blackout, ça bloque mes mémoires. J'ai de la mémoire, mais une bonne mémoire des dernières années, mais ça fait longtemps, 2014, là, ça fait 11 ans, là, plus qu'11 ans et 4 mois. Puis j'ai déménagé où j'habite là, j'habite à la même place, ça fait 10 ans, là, depuis juillet 2015. Je pensais que c'était 2016. Je m'en souviens avoir habité dans une petite place à Côte-des-Neiges, c'était comme une petite cellule de prison, là. C'était comme petit, là. C'était comme, il n'y avait même pas de cuisine, la cuisine était dans ma chambre, puis il n'y avait même pas de baignoire. Je ne pouvais pas me baigner, je peux me baigner maintenant où je suis, car c'est bon ça, parce que je ne peux pas me permettre un massage, là, mais bon. Fait que j'habitais il y avait beaucoup de moisissures, Moisissures, là, c'était peut-être ça qui a causé, ou le trompe, La perte de mémoire, des fois, ça revient. Fait que tout ce que j'ai de ma vie, là, ça a à faire avec mes écritures dans les journaux. Puis j'ai un diplôme d'études secondaires. Je me tarde. Un diplôme d'études secondaires. Bienvenue! J'ai un diplôme d'études secondaires, je les vois venir, je me tasse. J'ai un diplôme d'études secondaires. Fait que dans ce diplôme d'études secondaires que j'ai moi-même, c'est quelque chose, bien sûr, que j'ai un intérêt à savoir dans cette espèce, que mes cousins et cousins sont à bien me dire merci. Bien, c'est sûr que je dois garder ma droite, là, parce que fois ils viennent vite. Puis vous imaginez, tantôt, là, j'avais éclairé le terrain, là, j'ai dégagé ça du terrain. Ceux eux autres, ils allaient vite de même, là, puis allaient se pogner sur le terrain, puis allaient faire une piège de même, là. Puis c'était peut-être un artiste qui a essayé de faire de la création. Tantôt, là-bas, j'ai tassé les... c'était au milieu du chemin, c'était comme des rushs. Tu sais, tantôt, sur la vidéo, j'ai tassé ça, là. J'ai tassé ça sur le côté. Imagine, ils allaient passer vite de même, là, les deux, là. Mes cousins, ben, je vous considère comme une famille, même si on est dysfonctionnel, ben, c'est sûr que des fois, on est un peu dysfonctionnel dans ma manière d'Asperger's, là. Tu sais, ben, c'est possible qu'ils allaient passer vite de même là-bas, puis ça allait écraser un dans l'autre, parce qu'il y avait il y avait ça, mais mettez pas des... Faites sur le côté, là, ou là-bas, ben, c'était pas à place de faire ça, là. Tu sais, tantôt, juste sur la caméra, vous pouvez voir vous-même, là, je parle de... Tantôt, justement au coin, là, on va repasser par là. Tu sais, il y avait la branche, il y avait deux branches qui étaient ensemble, comme une petite pyramide, là, mais... Tu sais, c'était en danger, eux autres, ils auraient passé par là, ils auraient pu se trébucher dessus, là. Fait que mettez ça, c'est proche ici, là, mettez ça proche d'ici, quelque chose, c'était comme ça. C'est pas dans le chemin, mais c'était au milieu du chemin. Fait que les autres qui sont passés quand même vite avec la bicyclette, puis ils auraient passé par là, là. Tu sais, la sécurité publique, tu sais, des fois, il faut se penser à ces choses-là. Parce que, tu sais, je préfère vous voir en train de faire l'amour. Tu sais, moi, vous voulez me faire de l'amour, hein? Moi, je suis androgyne, pansexuel, hein, constamment, mais vous êtes homme-femme, ben, je vous dragonne arc-en-ciel pas mal comme il le faut, là. Pas de besoin de trop de il fallait que vous ayez l'âge de 18 ans, là. Je vous carte, hein, comme si vous allez aux cartes, puis vous allez acheter le cannabis, ou vous allez acheter comme quand vous allez au club, quand que vous allez acheter du cannabis, ou quand vous allez, bien sûr, que vous pouvez aller voir, tu sais, des danseuses, ou quand vous allez dans des établissements, ou quand vous achetez, bien sûr, de l'alcool, on vous carte. Fait que moi, je vais procéder dans la même chose. Vous voulez me faire l'amour, puis nous, les aspirants, on n'a pas beaucoup d'amis, là, mais moi, j'ai la solution, je veux rien savoir, à part de prêter allégeance les gens, soutenir mon rêve, qui est fondamentalement un appel à l'intégration du collectif nord-américain, puis fondamentalement des amis avec bénéfice, parce que nous, les Aspergers, on est différents à la manière qu'on communique, on a de la misère dans, tu sais, le non-écrit, là. Tu sais, le non-écrit, le social, les comportements, les normes non-écrites de la société, quand parler, la distance personnelle, la manière qu'on communique, ça peut être un peu peut-être académique, intellectuel, philosophique d'une manière ou d'une autre, puis on a tendance à se parler trop des... On va pas se rendre compte nécessairement qu'il n'y a pas d'intérêt, tu sais, vis-à-vis un certain sujet, tu sais. Fait que moi, quand vous parlez du rock and roll, ou la danse est mon sport préféré, même si j'adore le hockey, le sport, puis sport, que ce soit la gymnastique, n'importe quel sport, là. L'activité physique, j'aime bien ça. J'ai commencé moi-même à m'entraîner. Ça fait bien longtemps, depuis que j'ai sorti de ma dépression. J'ai perdu entre 80 et 93 livres. Fait qu'entre 80 et 93 livres que j'ai perdu moi-même. Fait que c'est pour ça que les Aspergers, nous, les autistes, on a des mutations dans le cerveau. Fait qu'on voit le monde différemment, vous comprenez? On voit le monde... ces mutations-là, c'est des petites mutations, comme des tu sais, les nanoparticules. Les nanoparties, c'est microscopique. Puis on ne sait pas la cause, qu'est-ce qui cause l'Asperger's. Ça s'est fusionné en 2013. Ça s'est fusionné, bien sûr, en 2013, tu sais. Ça s'est fusionné en 2013 avec... Il y a un fusionnement de l'autisme avec l'Asperger's, qui est aussi connu comme l'autisme hautement fonctionnel, bien sûr. Fait que dans ce domaine-là, bien sûr, ça l'a fait, bien sûr, une partie intégrale, mais j'utilise encore l'Asperger's comme syndrome. Puis c'est pas une maladie, parce que je l'ai entendu, puis le problème, c'est que nous, j'ai entendu les gens qui disaient, quand j'ai eu un travail, ils disaient, ben, ça va laisser faire, c'est une maladie, ça, laisse faire. J'ai entendu, mais c'est pas une maladie, ça. C'est pas une maladie, OK? Je suis pas une maladie, c'est pas ça. C'est juste qu'on a juste besoin d'une certaine compréhension. C'est ça que ça peut être perçu dans certaines choses. Oui, on a de la misère. Il faut nous le dire, il faut nous le verbaliser. OK, tu me fais chier, ou je me sens pas bien avec cette discussion, puis je suis offensé un peu, parce que nous, des fois, on est est direct, vous comprenez, on est, comment on dit, sans filtre. Fait que sans filtre, ces choses-là peuvent être un peu difficiles vis-à-vis le social, puis ça nous rencontre certains problèmes, puis c'est pas parce qu'on veut être de même, puis offensé, puis on en a compassion. L'empathie par l'action propre. Nous, on va pas nécessairement dire je m'excuse pour toi si c'est pas notre faute directement. C'est ça que, comme tu sais, dans la tradition, quand ça dit, tu sais, vous comprenez, vous communiquez, puis là, quelqu'un dit je m'excuse d'entendre ça, mais c'est pas sa faute, mais c'est juste une manière de parler, vous comprenez? Puis, parce que pour avoir de la compassion. On pensait encore. On pensait encore, mais ça... c'est pour eux que j'avais tassé de l'autre semaine. Puis ça, je vais le tasser un peu parce que là, s'il vient de la bicyclette, là même, là, c'est mieux que je tasse ça. Je vais tasser ça un peu parce que je pense qu'ici, il va d'avoir tassé. Mais c'est pour eux autres que tantôt, je l'avais fait. Puis vous voyez, il passait juste là, là. C'est ça, là. Tantôt, j'avais passé sur la caméra, puis il y avait ça direct ici sur le chemin, tu sais. C'est ça que j'ai passé. J'ai fait une évaluation citoyenne. Moi, j'aurais été en cycliste, j'ai pas d'argent pour m'acheter une bicyclette, là, mais peut-être un jour, je le ferai. Puis c'est comme mes cousins, mes cousines, même s'ils s'en foutent de moi, je lâche pas gauche, puis ils savent pas que j'ai vu un stress financier. Je un stress financier, mais j'ai du chocolat chez nous. Fait qu'ici, là, eux autres, ils auraient passé, là, puis ils auraient trébuché dans ça, là. C'est pour ça que je l'ai dit, tasser. C'était juste là, vous pouvez voir reculer au début de la vidéo, là, mais c'était pas au début, ça fait comme 22 minutes. Mais ça, là, c'était ici. Vous avez mis, je sais pas c'est qui, là, vous avez essayé de faire le dollar, j'apprécie, c'était quand même quelque chose, mais c'est pas la place. C'est pas la place. Comme moi, quand je me suis gratté parce que l'autre jour, j'ai quand même mes cicatrices, mais j'ai pas l'argent pour aller au dermatologue de 300$ pour aller évaluer qu'est-ce que j'ai sur mon clitopénis, là. Mon clitopénis. Mais bon, c'était ça ici. Ici, j'ai tassé ça de là. Eux autres sont passés en bicyclette, là. Vous avez laissé ça ici, vous avez mis ça comme ça, les roches, drettes au milieu. Il faut les mettre sur le côté, ces roches-là. Je comprends, vous avez essayé de faire une pyramide, mais les autres, ils auraient passé vite, là. Ils s'en venaient vite, puis ils passaient là, puis ils auraient trébuché sur ça. Vous avez causé un accident quand même. On est en public, on a des responsabilités quand même, tu sais. Fait que c'est pour ça, tu sais, ça. Tu sais, c'est ça. Fait que juste tasser ça ici. Comme ça, intégral, je vais juste tasser pour que ça soit plus aperçu, parce que sinon, je pense que c'est mieux que ça soit ici. Ça ici, comme ça. Ouais, je pense que c'est mieux là que là, parce que là, c'est un peu en pente, là. Fait que juste pour les tasser. Parce que je l'ai tassé de l'autre bord, parce que ça, là, c'était au milieu ici. Ces deux roches-là, vous pouvez voir, j'ai la preuve dans la vidéo. Tantôt, je suis passé, je parlais en anglais, puis j'ai tassé ça de là. C'était juste là, puis ça faisait un gros cercle. Puis qu'eux autres sont venus en bicyclette, puis ils sont fait une méchante pour avoir trébuché. Là. Ils trébuchent en bicyclette. Je vais faire les voir en train de s'entraîner pour faire l'amour, puis je leur fasse du matchmaking. Puis peut-être un des autres, il fait partie de la communauté LGBTQ. Peut-être il va venir me chatouiller, ou on va chatouiller peut-être en tant que... Peut-être un des autres est bisexuel, peut-être un des autres est homosexuel, peut-être un potentiel ami avec bénéfice pour moi-même, mais c'est tout, là. J'ai pas besoin de gros amis avec bénéfice seulement. Je ne veux pas perdre mon temps, ne perdez pas mon temps, je ne perdrai pas le vôtre. Tu sais, c'est tout. Juste, je ne perds pas votre temps, je ne perdrai pas le mien, mais en public, j'ai moi aussi, j'ai une responsabilité additionnelle. Puis on a une responsabilité additionnelle pour faire mal, tu sais, pour ne pas faire mal à personne, je veux dire. Pour ne pas faire mal à personne, on doit prendre la conséquence puis des actions, parce que je pense que peut-être pour ça j'ai survécu. Où j'habitais, je pense que j'aurais été mort. Je pense que je suis mort de la COVID. Je pense que je voulais me suicider. Fait que peut-être pour sauver un de mes cousins qui vient de passer. Peut-être ma vie a été sauvée pour sauver un des deux, pour qu'ils fassent l'amour ensemble. Ben, pas ensemble, peut-être, je sais pas, là. Pas, qu'ils soient aux hommes ou aux femmes, qu'ils fassent l'amour à un homme ou à une femme. Ou peut-être c'était un couple, je sais pas. Ça, je sais pas, je peux pas le dire, mais moi, je suis androgyne pansexuel, fait que moi, je suis aux hommes puis aux femmes, fait que that's it, that's all. Mais juste me demander constamment, puis faut que vous ayez 18 ans et plus, parce que tantôt, l'année passée, j'avais rencontré un groupe de mes concitoyens LGBTQ, c'était des homosexuels, on avait blagué un peu, on avait chanté un peu rock'n'roll, puis il a commencé à m'embrasser, puis j'ai dit non, ça me dérange pas, c'est juste demande-moi la prochaine fois, tu sais. Parce qu'il me l'a pas demandé, tu sais. Fait que j'ai dit, ah, c'est correct, là, je vais pas me plaindre rien, là, mais parce que, tu sais, on est bien d'avoir des bisous homo, là, puis en arc-en-ciel, j'aime ça, tu sais, fait que homme ou femme, je suis androgyne pansexuel moi aussi, 50-50, à cause de mes réincarnations, mais juste faites attention, tu sais, parce que faut pas laisser des choses faire de l'art ici, parce que il faut garder la droite, parce que il aurait pu trébucher parce que vous voyez, le champ de vision là-bas est pas si bon. Fait qu'il aurait venu vite, il aurait peut-être trébuché dans cette roche là, ces deux roches là-bas, tu sais. Fait que ici, je connais la montagne puis je veux que personne se blesse là. Moi, je n'aime pas la violence, puis je suis hyper vigilant, mais s'il y a des gens qui veulent me faire mal, tu sais, puis je vengeance 11 fois, comme ça, il n'y aurait plus jamais auparavant, puis j'aime pas la violence, je suis pas quelqu'un qui aime la violence, je suis quelqu'un qui veut faire l'amour, puis faire des affaires, puis travailler, puis bien sûr, j'ai survécu moi aussi plein de choses, c'est peut-être pour ça que j'ai survécu, pour faire quelque chose de bien, en ce moment, comme tasser les blés du chemin pour qu'ils composent, qu'ils fassent, bien sûr, cette situation d'amour ensemble. Fait que la TRD, je vous fais appel de constituer puis de faire la solution de la TRD, théorie de la refusion de la dette, pour avoir la TRD, théorie de la refusion de la dette, pour la création de l'unité d'échange universel, pour la fusion impériale du collectif de l'Amérique du Nord dans une constitution d'impériale république, pour le fusionnement du Canada des États-Unis, en faisant, bien sûr, le grand compromis qu'on avait continué à faire, puis qu'on continue à faire par l'effort individuel et collectif du français, bien sûr. Parce que moi aussi, je dois le faire. Le compromis du français moi-même. Fait que si moi, je le fais pas, bien sûr, dans cette conséquence d'avoir pour le faire moi-même, c'est quelque chose de bien sûr que moi, j'ai pas à le faire. Puis toi, tu dis, j'ai pas à le faire moi-même, mais on doit le faire par amour du français, hein. Fait que je vous fais appel à tous à soutenir la TRD, théorie de la refusion de la dette, avec les États-Unis pour le fusionnement et la création de deux institutions de partenariat public-privé, soit l'armée du Dragon, les légions pour la sécurité, service et défense, totalement intégrées, bien sûr, puis la fondation de cette nouvelle réalité géopolitique, où on va se fusionner, puis on va faire, bien sûr, ben du bien travail public, par la TRD, théorie de la refusion de la dette, que j'explique, que je discute dans bien d'autres vidéos. Que je vous... TRD, la théorie de la refusion de la dette pour la création de l'UI, puis le fusionnement du Canada des États-Unis constitutionnels.